30 years ago during the war against the demons, it was the Mervinger family's efforts that led the anti-demon forces to victory, but the cost was heavy. Most of the family was killed, leaving behind only 2 survivors, 8-year-old Elric Mervinger and his sister. Soon, those who once followed the Mervingers turned their backs on the orphan children. Witnessing such cruelty at a young age, Elric swore to become a powerful wizard one day, but life gave him more lemons. Elric was diagnosed with a rare condition known as monovascularity, which made it impossible for him to practice magic, turning him into a laughingstock. Despite endless efforts to cure his illness, nothing really worked. Then one day, it seemed his prayers were finally answered. He encountered a dragon, the only hope to cure his condition and restore the Mervinger legacy. To his shock, the dragon was already dead. In its place stood the shadow of a horned man with an eerie smile. Gazing at Elric, he thinks that he has a new body to possess now. Walking closer, he offered Elric the chance to become one with him, to destroy this world and create a new one together. Dark energy began to swirl around Elric's body, occupying his vessel. That's when realization hits him. This had been a test set by the Dark Prince all along. If only he had known the consequences, Elric would have never set out in search of the dragon. Yet even as he stood on the brink, he vowed to himself that he would not let himself be devoured so easily. Elric is given the news about his monovascularity along with the fact that the doctors have tried everything to cure it, but, unfortunately, found no solution. This means he won't be able to use magic for the rest of his life. Later, at Euston Academy, he calls his sister, Hayes, who seems worried about his condition and asks about what the doctor said. Even though Elric knows there's no cure, he assures her that he can take care of himself and will be fine soon. Still, Hayes can't help but worry. Elric, sensing this, makes up an excuse and cuts the call. Anxiously, he wonders how he's going to tell her that he might have to come back home soon. After that, Elric makes his way to the results board to check the end-of-term results. It turns out Elric passes all the theory exams with flying colors. Yet again, he fails the magic practice exams. It's his 4th failure in a row, which means he's going to be expelled. He studied every single paper to get the highest rankings. Not just that, he had the brains and a natural instinct to detect and interpret mana, talents any wizard would dream of. Still, no matter how amazing those talents were, his condition made it impossible to practice magic. One of Elric's teachers suggested he become a professor instead, but that wouldn't help him restore his family's glory. Elric's grandfather, Uzdan Mervinger, known as the Wizard of the Stars, was a hero in the war against the demons. He built the very school Elric now attends. Being expelled from it would be as humiliating as bringing disgrace to his family name with his own hands. Just then, he hears 2 freshmen gossiping about him and walks up to them. Elric stops them, threatening to report them to their teaching assistant, Sean. The 2 freshmen quickly leave. Later, Elric reads a book searching for a cure to his illness. Suddenly, he gets slapped. Turning around, he sees it's Sean, furious at him for using his name to threaten people. Sean Neresta is from the prestigious Neresta family. Since the fall of the Mervingers, the Chirium has been run by hexacol formed by the top 6 families of the empire. One of them is the Neresta family. Despite all this, Sean is Elric's only friend, the one who's always been there for him. As they sit together, Sean passes Elric a paper telling him about the Diamond Dragon exploration plan. He suggests Elric join the party since the location of a new type of proto-dragon has been discovered. Hearing this, Elric grabs the paper instantly, unable to believe that the mystical beast, possibly the origin of magic, has been found. His excitement is so clear that Sean starts boasting about how great of a friend he is, but all Elric can think about is that there must be a cure for his illness out there. Still, this isn't a personal project, so the findings would belong to the Dean. Suddenly, Elric slams the map on the table and starts laughing like a madman. Sean, a bit confused, watches as Elric points at the map, declaring the den isn't where everyone thinks it is. Loud enough, Elric points at the map and suggests that the den is not there. As Sean hears that, he looks around and realizes that nobody heard that. So he advises Elric to stay careful as he doesn't want to be on the wrong foot with the professors since they took part in that. Still, it doesn't change the fact that Elric is right. Sean tells him to keep his mouth shut and act like a gentleman considering the background of the Neresta family. Then through his magic, Sean draws a circle around the map to further investigate it. Both of them see a fissure where 2 tectonic plates collide and an insane amount of mana flows out. Elric realizes that its worth is around 100,000 years, and the criteria seem to resemble that of the Dragon's Den. After that, Elric wonders about the 3 principles of the monostream, to which Sean replies after being a bit hesitant. He says from high to low, from wide to narrow, from hot to cold. If Elric searches using those rules, he will find a fissure in no time. But then Sean points at a place and tells Elric to keep in mind that there is a stream of extremely hot groundwater, which hinders mana accumulation, making it tough to survive for dragons. Sean's eyes fall on Mount Akron, which is spitting out lava, and Elric comes to the realization that the heated groundwater from the mount flows all across the continent. Coming back to reality, Sean, out of confusion and frustration, can't believe that there's no den as they already detected a dragon magic wave from that area. Meanwhile, Elric smiles and says that he never mentioned there isn't a den there and instead points out that it's in the Caragol cave. Later on, Sean makes his way to the dean's office, but is hesitant about how he should mention that to him since he could get expelled. But it could also be the case that what Elric said was true. Anyhow, Sean hears some sound from the training room, and it turns out to be Elric who was trying to focus on his mana to regain his family's long-lost glory. Sean sees his friend struggling and realizes that this could be the only chance his illness can get cured. So as a true friend, he decides to help him and enters the dean's office. As the dean hears that, he takes this as a blow to his ego, that his research team could be wrong. Sean tries to convince him otherwise, but the dean seems furious and says that Sean will be paying for the consequences no matter what his background is like. The dean himself is a 7-circle wizard and begins emitting a massive chunk of mana. But before anything could happen, Elric slams open the door. Elric bows down to the dean and apologizes for entering like that. The dean goes straight to the point and questions whether he convinced Sean to say that. Elric agrees, to which the dean says that he is grateful for his insight, but argues that it's all based on a gut feeling without any proof. Elric smiles and says that his opinion is based on common sense, so easy that even a kid could understand it. Meanwhile, Sean is crying silent tears, wondering why Elric is taunting the dean. On the other hand, the dean taunts back that Elric is nothing but a failing student who can't even concentrate mana. Still, Elric stays serious, to which the dean says that there are people who do get lucky, and then there are people who are worthless scum and don't know where they belong, pointing at Elric. But, of course, being a professor, he can't ignore Elric's opinion entirely, so he suggests a wager. Elric asks for an elaboration on the idea. So the dean explains that he will grant Elric permission to recruit the exploration party. And even if he needs more money to buy anything, that budget will be given. But there is one condition. The condition being, if he fails, there is one thing that the dean wants from him, and that is his grandfather's one and only heirloom. Later, as the carriage rolls steadily, Sean loses his temper at Elric for agreeing to the dean's deal. Elric, however, seems completely unbothered, continuing to read his book with a detached calm. Frustrated, Sean snatches the book from his hands and shouts that if they fail to locate the den, he will lose his family's heirloom, an artifact passed down through generations. That heirloom is none other than the Grand Collar of Wizardry, a relic the dean has had eyes on for years. Strangely, Elric keeps smiling. That carefree smile only enrages Sean further because he too will be dragged into ruin if Elric fails. Still angry, Sean demands to know what Elric plans to do next. Elric finally sits up and, to Sean's surprise, reveals that he didn't accept the dean's wager because he wants to stay in the academy. He then declares that if the dean wants the Mervinger family's treasure, then he'd better be prepared to give up his position as dean. A little anxious, Sean remembers other than being labeled the shame of the Mervinger family, Elric once earned another infamous title, the Mad Dog of the Mervinger family. Elric suddenly wears an eerie smile, which makes Sean uneasy. 7 years ago, when they first entered the academy and Elric was only 15, most of the other students were already practicing their mana. Due to his condition, Elric lags behind, which leads to whispers and doubt. People question whether he's even a true Mervinger and gets bullied often that is probably adopted. Sean pities Elric, sure, but he pities the ones who provoke him even more because Elric always makes sure they pay the price. Later, Elric gets appointed to Usedown Academy's disciplinary committee. Whenever asked about his ruthless justice, Elric casually states that he punishes his bullies according to the Empire's law. Eventually, he's suspended. The Academy's regulations hold that all students are equal, but after that incident, no one dares cross him again. Snapping back to the present, Sean suddenly notices what Elric is reading. It's a banned book, and Elric is reading it in plain sight. Sean gets furious and begins to yell, demanding to know what Elric's intentions are. Nervously, Elric admits that if he gets caught, he could very well be executed. But Sean insists, why is he reading the Tiger King's body fortification? Elric replies innocently. He believes there might be a way to cure his condition in that book. After all, back in ancient times, the Tiger King led the Therianthropes and invaded the Empire. His body fortification made him nearly invincible. It took the Empire's full might to repel the Therianthropes and drive them beyond the borders. A wall was raised to keep them out, and the Tiger King lost the ability to use his fortification. Sean interrupts. Hadn't the scholars failed to restore it? But Elric calmly corrects him. The scholars, in fact, did succeed in restoring it. Now Elric's task is to find a way to apply that to his own body. Sean can hardly believe it, but in the end, he decides to trust Elric. Suddenly, the carriage comes to a stop. Alerted, both Sean and Elric step outside to see what's going on. In front of them stands Liburn and his group. Sean steps in front of Elric, ready to defend him, but Liburn gives up soon, stating that the Dean sent them to offer assistance. At first, Elric finds the gesture suspiciously kind. He doesn't need help, certainly not from the Dean. Sean leans toward him and whispers that some of Liburn's group are concealing their true strength, a move typical of the greedy Dean Veru. But Elric has come prepared. A little while earlier, back at the academy, Veru realizes something that makes his blood run cold. Elric has taken Gehenna's breath and the sky armor with him. Gehenna's breath is a devastating item containing ever-burning sulfur capable of turning anything into ash. And sky armor, a legendary relic, offers powerful protection against both elemental magic and physical trauma. Verix loses his mind. The idea of handing over 2 4-star items to the mad dog of the Mervinger family is sheer madness. He can't let anyone find out, but a thought crosses his mind. What if Elric really does find the den? Verix mutters under his breath. Elric is a Mervinger after all. To cover his tracks, Verric quietly decides to fire several researchers. After all, how could a mere student discover something that trained scholars failed to see? He shakes off his anxiety with a sinister smile. Veru reassures himself that soon, thanks to Elric's foolish little bet, the grand collar of wizardry will be in his possession. Once he obtains it, the position of minister will be within reach. The hunger for power burns clear in Varu's eyes. Elric may have won the bet, but that means nothing if he doesn't survive long enough to return. Elric deciphers the ancient text, and with that done, Sean traces the lingering mana in the air. Unleashing an overwhelming surge of his own mana, Sean pinpoints the exact location of the hidden den. At that moment, everyone realizes Elric had been right all along. Without wasting a second, Elric turns to the team and shouts that they need to move fast before the beam of light marking the location vanishes. Hearing this, Sean wastes no time. He grabs Elric by the waist and bolts forward with blinding speed, leaving the rest of the group far behind. A while later, the others finally arrive at the marked location, only to be stunned by what they see, or rather what they don't. There's nothing there. No cave, no den, just open space. Dragons rarely settle in such exposed areas, adding to their confusion. Liburn, seizing what he thinks is a golden opportunity to humiliate Elric, steps forward with a smirk. But before he can say a word, Elric asks Sean to blast a hole into the ground. Without hesitation, Sean unleashes a massive explosion, carving a deep pit beneath them. To everyone's surprise, a hidden den is revealed below. A dense wave of mana surges up from the depths, taking their breath away. Elric knows that it's just a release of mana and tells everyone to calm down as they prepare to descend. He leads the way, and the rest begin to follow. The cave is freezing cold. Even with Sean using his magic to keep the group warm, the cold persists. As they go deeper, Elric suddenly raises a hand and orders them to stop. Something just gave him the chills, and not from the cold cave. Elsewhere, deeper within the cave, an eerie creature with a single glowing eye bound in chains and hidden from sight can't contain his excitement. It senses the newcomer's presence. Back at the front of the group, Sean and Elric approach a towering stone door, the true entrance to the dragon's den. The team is eager, but debates whether to open it by force or through magic. But Elric quickly halts them, warning that the door is protected by a dragon's enchantment. Touching it recklessly could trigger deadly consequences. Meanwhile, Liburn strays from the group and finds himself next to an ornate gold handle. Out of sheer curiosity, he touches it. Elric notices and screams at him to stop, but it's already too late. The entire gate begins to shake and rumble violently. A thunderous rumble echoes through the cave, and Elric in an instant realizes that it is a trap. To protect the group from the danger of the den, Sean raises a powerful magic shield for protection. He turns to Elric and urges him to decipher the next segment of the text before it's too late. The others are on edge as no one wants to die in an isolated den, but Elric remains focused. He tells everyone to stay calm. He sees the moment for what it is, not just a trap, but a test. The answer he believes is right there, hidden in plain sight. He just has to trust himself like he always has. Now all he has to do is be quick with decoding the answer. As Sean holds the protective barrier and panic stays around them, Elric finishes deciphering the inscription. He turns to the group and urges them to hold it together, because if his calculations are correct, he might just lead them all out of this waking nightmare. Holding the gold handle tightly, Elric chants a spell, desperately hoping the nightmare will turn into a daydream, as everyone's lives now depend on him. The gods must have been with him that day, because somehow his tricks worked. The rumbling ceased and the terrible situation was finally over. Sean, completely exhausted and drenched in sweat, falls to the ground. Seeing him panting, Elric rushes over, but Sean quickly assures him that he's completely all right. Meanwhile, the rest of the group checks on each other, making sure everyone is okay. Even after going through such a life-or-death situation, Sean admits that Elric's work was impressive, a compliment that instantly makes Elric feel a little cocky. Suddenly, without warning, a man is struck by a bolt of magic and collapses to the ground. It's round 2 inside the cave. Reacting quickly, Sean forms a barrier to protect everyone, shouting at Elric to work faster. Elric goes back into action only to realize something shocking. This isn't just any spell work. This is the origin of magic itself, the legendary dragon tongue magic. With urgency, Elric sprints to the gate as Sean screams that he can't hold on much longer. Just in time, Elric throws the sky armor at the gate, stunning everyone. How on earth did this so-called failure get his hands on a 4-star item? Elric silently prays that it works, and miraculously, it does. The trap is broken. Panting, Elric sits back and realizes that his favorite robe has been completely destroyed. Just then, the gate rumbles and swings open, a bright light coming through. Elric calls out to the team, urging them all to make their way inside. Inside, they are met with a breathtaking sight, treasure more than any of them could have imagined. The team stands in awe. Among the loot, Elric finds well-preserved parchments that astonish him further. One of them praises Elric's work and refers to him as the captain. Just then, Sean comes up behind him, grabs him playfully, and praises his sharp thinking. Elric explains that he's always excelled and been great in theory. He had approached the situation like a test, laying out the structural formula of the spell before combining it with elemental magic. Suddenly, a strange realization hits Elric. Something about all of this feels familiar, as though someone had once told him this very thing. Sean notices the distant look in Elric's eyes and asks about it, but Elric brushes it off. Sean then reassures him that no one will ever dare to disrespect him or his family again. Still, Sean admits that something feels a little off, but decides to ignore it for now. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the chamber, Liburn receives orders from a magical globe. He must eliminate Elric. Almost simultaneously, a figure grabs Elric, also addressing him as captain, and drags him away to see a lab. Sean laughs and jokes that Elric's a big boy now, being called captain and all. Soon after, Liburn approaches Sean and traps him with a claim. There's a dragon's corpse hidden behind the hills of treasure. With excitement and curiosity, Sean follows him, assuming Elric will come along later. At the rear of the treasure room, they do indeed find a dragon's corpse, ancient, appearing to be over 4,000 years old. Meanwhile, the ones who dragged Elric away begin beating him up. Elric curses himself for letting his guard down. One of the bullies coldly tells him that he has no choice but to take him out. Everyone else remains distracted, still gawking at the treasure-filled den. Back with Sean, he suddenly notices the dragon's body twitch, a weird sign. At the same moment, Elric tries to scream for help but is gagged by the bullies. He's overwhelmed with regret, thinking about how hard he worked to get here and how foolish he was to trust the wrong people. Just as the bully raises his magic to finish Elric off, something strange happens. He hears Sean's voice echoing through the chamber. For everyone, get out of the way. What Elric sees next is beyond belief. The once dead dragon is now chasing Sean and Liburn, its awakening lighting up the entire chamber in a blinding glow. Elric is stunned. Trouble after trouble, he surely didn't expect any of this. Elric stands in front of the dragon as the skeletal beast roars at him. Even though he's shaking, he pulls himself together and decides to treat this as part of his test, a test where he finds the dragon and survives its rage. Suddenly, Elric notices something strange. The dragon is staying completely still. His mind races with thoughts. Maybe the dragon is waiting for its breath to reload, or perhaps it's using a massive amount of mana right now. Then it clicks in his mind. The dragon is reloading so it can use its breath multiple times in succession. Elric turns toward the team and tells them to prepare for impact. The whole team, along with Sean, forms a barrier. And just like that, the dragon unleashes its breath. The blast is so powerful that cracks start forming in the shield created by the entire team. Elric calculates that it takes 20 seconds for each breath to reload. And if they can survive this one, they'll have a chance to fight and win against the dragon. Out of the corner of his eye, he looks at the door and calculates that they can reach it in 17 seconds and close it in 3. But before anything can happen, the shield cracks and shatters. It's time for the dragon to reload its breath. Elric screams for the entire team to run at that exact moment. Everyone starts sprinting, and Elric thinks he'll make it past the dragon too. But then out of nowhere, the legendary troopers tasked with protecting the dragon stab him from behind. Sean sees this and yells at Elric to defend himself. Elric knows he's the only one who can handle it. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through his head, and everything starts to feel connected. His headache is so severe that he can't hear anything. A trooper comes in for a strike, but Elric dodges it swiftly. That's when he realizes this isn't a delusion. He knows exactly how the troopers will move and attack. He starts connecting the dots and realizes that following a trail of orbs will keep him safe, but he has to stay alert because it could still be a trap. Taking the risk, he screams for everyone to follow him and they rush behind Sean and Elric. As they're running, Elric and Sean dodge attacks and protect the team. They are almost at the gates, but then Liburn, quite literally the headache painkillers were invented for, loses control and tumbles to the ground. He begs Elric to save him. Elric knows the situation is totally screwed, but he can't just leave him there to die. Of course, his morale didn't let Liburn rot all alone in there, so Elric grabs Liburn's hand and pulls him out with him. The troopers are trapped inside, and even if the gate is open, they cannot make it out. On the other hand, Sean is really mad at Elric for not prioritizing himself and putting himself at risk to save Liburn. Nervously, Elric chuckles and says that it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, the troopers are trying to make their way out, but they can't. It puts Elric into deep thought. Someone must have damaged and manipulated the dragon spell, and there is surely a good chance that someone got there before they did. Suddenly, Elric sees something and can't believe what he's seeing. Then the troopers break through the barrier and are now coming to attack them. Everyone tries running, but all the directions are blocked. Being Mr. Smarty Pants, Elric goes back inside as he knows what to do. Sean thinks Elric has gone crazy and tries to stop him, but Elric smiles and tells him he'll catch up in a while. Then the door thuds and shuts behind him. Sean begins banging on the door, trying desperately to get Elric to open it, but it's no use. And Sean shakes at the thought of Elric being all alone inside. 7 years ago, after Elric's suspension period ended, Sean approached him to be friends, but Elric told him to go away, leaving Sean shocked. Every time Sean tried to befriend him, Elric would simply tell him to go away. One day, during a lesson, the entire class was being tested, and the professor told them to run. Sean covered almost half the distance quickly and realized he should have taken Elric with him. Suddenly, Sean tripped and nearly fell off a cliff, barely holding on. The bullies of the class approached Sean, and instead of helping him, they began to bully him. Sean realized he couldn't hold on much longer, but he couldn't use magic either, or he'd fail the test and wouldn't be able to show his father his face. When all hope seemed lost, someone grabbed him. It was Elric. He pulled Sean up and saved his life. Sean told him to go ahead and leave him there, but Elric reminded him that he wants us to be friends. Sean was about to thank him, but Elric simply told him to grab a few artifacts from his house as thanks. Returning to the present, Sean is panicking. He promises Elric to stay put while he brings his father and the elders of his family to save him. Elric appreciates the effort, but he knows he's not dying there. He runs in the direction of the dragon because he knows exactly what he's about to find. Once Elric gets what he's been looking for, he is now armored, thinking to himself that quid pro quo is what life is all about. Finally, he takes out one of the gadgets he's been carrying for the hospitality of the troopers. Elric pulls out the artifact, which is usually activated by mana, but due to his condition, he can't use it. Still, he releases it even as his eyes begin to bleed. He decides to use his life energy instead to activate it, convinced that this is all part of the dragon's test. He knows that the dragon is the one holding the answers and looks toward the spear lodged deep inside the dragon's body. He believes that the spear holds the answers, and if his answer is wrong, he's doomed. Even though it's a 50-50 situation, he doesn't back down even as all the troopers rush toward him. With the proudest smile on his face, he acknowledges that Mervinus never back down. As soon as he pulls out the spear, everything begins to rumble, and the answer he was expecting turns out to be just a hoax. He doesn't know what lies ahead. All he sees is a man with horns. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he knows he's doomed for sure. The man with the horns looks at him, and Elric feels chills running down his spine. The strange man begins to approach him while the dragon roars in fury and horror. The battle begins between the dragon and the man with horns while Elric stands frozen just watching the scene unfold. The amount of mana being released by the strange man is as powerful as that of an 8-circle wizard or perhaps even stronger. It takes just one slash for the man with horns to end the life of the dragon right then and there. Elric can't believe his eyes. It was that strange man who ended the dragon. Now the man begins to approach him again. And as he looks at Elric, he thinks to himself that he has found a new body to possess, one that will allow him to escape the prison he's been confined in for ages. The man with horns tries to lure Elric into becoming one with him, promising to burn this world and build a new one. It isn't a choice. It's more of an order. The man with horns is none other than Mephistopheles, the legendary Dark Prince. 1,000 years ago, the humans managed to confine him, but things have finally changed, and now he has found the perfect vessel to possess. The dark energy begins to pour into Elric's body. He thinks to himself that if he had known this wasn't a dragon's test, but rather the devil's trap, he never would have come here. He's about to give up and fall to his knees while the Dark Prince laughs, observing how Shineage's magic is actually making Elric even stronger. On the other hand, Elric can't stop feeling guilty. His whole family gave their lives to drive out the demons during the war, and that sacrifice took everything away from him and his sister. They were left alone in this cruel world. Even the person they trusted the most turned their back on the poor kids and left them deserted. All Elric ever wanted was to get rid of his illness and bring glory back to his family's name to make all the betrayers regret the actions they took. Poor Elric is about to give up when suddenly he realizes he hasn't even started yet. He has to fight back because a true movinger doesn't get dragged into evil like this. With that resolve, he begins to fight the evil with all his might and will, hoping that his voice will reach his descendants someday in the future. He throws out the spirit of the Dark Prince from his body, leaving even Mephistopheles in shock at the amount of power he felt coming from Elric. Elric Movinger stands tall, mana radiating from him, so much so that for the first time, the Dark Prince feels fear in the presence of a human. Elric raises his hand as he aims to engulf the first cup of evil as it was intended by fate. Suddenly, he finds himself in a place that looks nothing like the den he was trapped in. He has no idea where he is and he looks at his hands trying to figure out where he could be. Elric's eyes fall on a man standing at the edge of a cliff, and he wonders who that could be, though he looks strangely familiar. The man in the cloak turns and says that they were a group of scholars who wish to discover the limits of wizardry. In Elric's mind, he realizes this is the voice that has been echoing in his head constantly. The man continues and says that some of them wanted more power than they could even handle. Power so immense, they were willing to be absorbed by demons and do nothing but bring harm to the world. When they realized what they were doing was wrong, they had to repent, so they created a family. The sole purpose of this family was to eradicate evil from the world, but they could never truly stop evil from spreading because evil will never leave the world. Then the man in the cloak moves his hands and Elric screams for him to watch out. Suddenly, Elric opens his eyes in a hospital and sees Sean looking out the window crying. Sean is pissed that of all the times, Elric had to wake up when he was crying and sobbing like a dramatic lady. Elric assures him that it's okay to cry. Sean tells him that he went back and returned with the rescue squad to save his dumb friend. Elric rubs his head and says that he is the head of a distinguished family and calling him dumb is inappropriate. Sean calls him dumb again and tells him not to do anything stupid again. Then Sean tells him to stand up for a moment. When Elric does, he realizes that he's gotten taller. Sean tells him to look in the mirror. When Elric sees himself, he wonders what happened and when he changed so drastically. With concern, Sean asks what happened back in the den and what happened to the dragon. Playfully, Elric looks at him and says that he can't tell him at the moment. Sean feels offended. It sucks to have a best friend who keeps secrets. After that, Elric asks Sean about the den, and Sean tells him that his family is protecting it, keeping everyone out since it now belongs to the den's finder, Elric. It's the law. The one who discovers a dragon's den becomes its rightful owner. Sean sighs and proudly says that if only Elric knew what he had to go through to keep the Chirium and the Academy away from the den. Elric smiles at Sean, knowing he went as far as he could to save him. Suddenly, Elric realizes that Dean Vero would be greedy enough to try and claim the excavation rights for himself. Strangely, he smiles, knowing that Vero once tried to kill him. Sean realizes that Elric is planning something bad. Elric asks him for a favor, but Sean pretends he can't hear him. Still, Elric says it anyway. He needs Sean to spread the word that he is injured and unconscious. And no matter what noise Sean made, he still ended up hearing him. Sean does what Elric tells him to do. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, it is announced that Elric is unconscious and no visitors are allowed. Everyone greedy for excavation rights tries to force their way inside, but the Neresta family manages to shut down the hospital, leaving everyone waiting. On the other hand, the spokesman of the Neresta family, Carl Dunnies, steps into Elric's room but soon leaves. As he exits, Elric turns and says to someone, when is he going to start talking and stop staring at him? He calls that person Mephisto. It is none other than the Dark Prince himself who takes serious offense at being called that. So Elric suggests another name, but the Dark Prince doesn't like that either. Elric holds his chest as he realizes he knew all along that the Dragon Heart is the source of the absolute power of the proto-dragons. He wonders if that was the moment when the Dragon Heart entered him, but something feels different because he remembers the Dark Prince tried to use his body as a vessel. So he turns to the Dark Prince for answers. In the prehistoric age, when the rule was in the hands of the gods, there were 4 servants to the Dark Lord: Finus, the Prince of Demise; Insanium, the Prince of Insanity; Fornicationes, the Prince of Fornication; and lastly, Picardum Originale, the Prince of Original Sin known as Mephistopheles. He was the greatest Dark Prince who is now bothering Elric just to be called by the right name. Coming back to them, the Dark Prince is acting like an angry girlfriend, but Elric doesn't seem to care much. Elric wonders whether all demons are that stupid or if the Dark Prince just has hearing issues. The Dark Prince gets angry that he waited for 1,000 years only to have his mana stolen by a human. The same Dark Prince who once had plans to have the entire world at his feet, but he did not know what destiny had in store for him. Shinnike, the King of Dragons, was the only one who got in the way of the Dark Prince and planned to keep him buried with him for eternity. Since then, the Dark Prince has done nothing but wait for a whole 1,000 years until one lucky day, Elric came exploring the den. The very human he wanted to possess had also passed all the tests laid by him. He was inches away from getting what he wanted, but all his efforts went in vain. And all he is left now is just a glimpse of his dark powers. Quite literally, he can't understand what kind of magic Elric used that enabled him to absorb all his mana. Meanwhile, Elric just thinks that Miffy is a drama queen. That pisses off the Dark Prince, and he says that all the Mervingas are arrogant. As Elric lays down, he thinks about the monologue, hoping that their voices can reach their descendants someday in the foreseeable future. Suddenly, he thinks that the voice he has been hearing all along was his grandfather's. He remembers the very first thing the voice ever said to him, to engulf the first cup of evil as was intended by fate, which could have meant absorbing the powers of a demon. He looks at the collar shocked. This collar must be the tool that lets him consume the Dark Prince and possibly many more demons. Elric glances at the Dark Prince with a side eye and wonders if he could absorb other demons like that, which implies that there are second and third cups still to come his way. This realization excites him, and the next thing he does is take the Dark Prince into the mountains. But he needs to check something before he figures out how to use the collar, so he starts meditating. Through his focus, he can hear and see everything. After that, he ignites a huge fire, which leaves the Dark Prince in utter shock, wondering how a human could use the magic of dragons. That is something he wouldn't have even expected from a Mervinga. On the other hand, Elric feels relieved as his mana avascularity, the disease that held him back, is finally cured, and he is no longer the shame of the glorious Mervinga family. Now he knows that it is time to make all the traitors and those who belittled him once regret their choices. Outside the hospital, the press gathers, seeking answers regarding Elric, but mainly concerning the excavation rites. However, Carl shuts them out, saying that further details will be given through the Terrium and that a written statement will be provided. Then Carl walks up to Sean, shaking and begging him to never make him do that again. Carl seems serious about his social anxiety issues, but Sean brushes it off. Then Carl reminds Sean that if people find out he's been handling things like this, the royal family and the Tyrium will be very mad at him. Sean assures him that Elric has a plan, and all he has to do is have faith in him. A while ago, Elric was in his room thinking that the higher the stakes, the greater the rewards. That alone is enough to stress Sean out since Carl just informed him that Elric left on his own, only leaving a note that he would be back soon. Suddenly, Carl sees an envelope, gets nervous realizing the gravity of the situation, and makes Sean aware of it. Out of nowhere, the gate blasts open, and in comes Sean's older sister, Tasha, confronting him for doing something behind her back. Tasha is the Phoenix Witch. Unsurprisingly, Sean seems stressed by her sudden entry. The royal family, the Tyrium, and the Societas Fidei have produced the top 3 geniuses of the contemporary era referred to as the 3 stars or the Tristella who guide the empire to glory. Tasha is one of the Tristellas. Tasha grabs Carl by the ear, wondering why he didn't give her letter to Sean, and he apologizes while being nervous, saying he's just been really caught up with his duties. Sean sweats and wonders why she's really here, and she says that she practices medicine and heard Elric was injured, so she came to help him. Sean knows he's screwed if she goes into that room since Elric isn't there, so he needs to make her leave right now. But Tasha doesn't look like she cares one bit, and she reminds Sean who she really is. She gets straight to the point. What happened to the excavation rights to the den? Sean completely forgot that his sister has a thing for dragons, but he tells her that's for Elric to decide, not him. She understands and she takes her leave, waiting for Elric to wake up. Right before she leaves, she tells him that his big sister is going to spank him for being a bad boy. Sean is terrified enough to crap his pants and hopes Elric comes back soon. On the other hand, Carl admits that he is about to faint as well. Meanwhile, the news is spreading everywhere that young Mervinga is still unconscious and people wonder what will happen to the excavation rights. Elric sees the newspaper and knows that Sean is doing his job well. In the newspaper is a picture of Dean Veru, and Elric knows what's about to go down with him with a strange smile on his face. In Verex's office, Lyburn approaches him, addressing him as the minister, but Verek reminds him that the elections haven't even begun yet. Then Verek asks Lyburn how Elric is doing, and Lyburn tells him that according to the rumors, Elric is about to die. Pretentiously, Verek smiles and says that he is so sorry to hear that. Lyburn suggests that it might be safer for someone to take care of things, but Verex, out of rage, stops him. Then Verex puts his cup down and says that they'll be one professor short when the election is over, and he wonders who's going to take that spot. Lyburn, seizing the opportunity, says that he won't let him down. Later that night, Elric stands outside a window and uses his inner eye, which allows him to see the other side of reality. He seeks the hidden grains into which he will inject the mana from the dragon heart. This way, he can cast magic without actually saying the words out loud. He casts the magic and takes his first step into the forest, which draws him toward the beginning of it. In order to bring Varu down and let the world know that the glory of the Mervingus is back, Elric knows he needs to become insanely powerful before the election takes place. The Dark Prince mocks Elric after seeing him only jump higher, scoffing if that's all he could do with all the powers he stole from him. But Elric takes that insult as motivation to become faster and stronger. As Elric closes his eyes, the Dark Prince grows irritated, unable to accept such a gesture of disregard. To him, closing one's eyes while in his presence is disrespectful. Still, Elric doesn't care what he says. He remembers something called incantation in Dragon Tongue magic. First, he forms the image of the magic in his mind. Then all he has to do is speak it into existence. Watching him perform it effortlessly, the Dark Prince can't believe his eyes. Elric begins to fly. Even while feeling anxious, he still thinks it's amazing and hella powerful, so he gives it another try. The Dark Prince is baffled as he witnesses incantation and double casting executed simultaneously at a beginner level, no less. He knows the Mervingus have always been natural enemies of demonkind, terrifying in their potential, but no one has ever been as innately gifted as Elric. Suddenly, memory strikes him. There was one exception, the very first Mervinger. But the Dark Prince brushes the thought aside. This only strengthens his resolve. He must possess Elric soon before he grows even stronger. He starts plotting how to do exactly that, all while following closely behind. Meanwhile, Elric reflects that while incantation is powerful, he's still too inexperienced to wield it proficiently. He needs a teacher, someone who understands dragon magic inside and out and can keep this secret. He certainly can't trust anyone from Varric's academy, however it must be as powerful as one of the lords of the Hexacol. With no suitable candidates in mind, Elric almost gives up, but then he remembers the best teacher around, the Dark Prince Mephis. So Elric asks him directly if he would teach him. Mephis scoffs, wondering why he should after all. What's in it for him? Elric lays down a bold offer. He'll use alchemy to create Mephis a new body, but only if Mephis trains him. Mephis tells him he's getting ahead of himself, but Elric reminds him that Mephis has little to gain if Elric doesn't become stronger. Acting like a sassy girlfriend, Mephis huffs, questioning why he should teach someone in weeks what took him eons to master. Instead, he offers Elric a deal. Become one with him and he'll teach him everything while secretly plotting his own dark agenda to take over Elric's body bit by bit, chipping off his soul. Elric, of course, finds him damn annoying, but he knows he holds the better bargaining chip. In response to Mephis's melodramatic rant, Elric shuts him up with a silly incantation, one that transforms the Dark Prince into a kawaii version of himself. Infuriated, Mephis rages even harder while Elric cringes so hard at the sight that he nearly barfs his guts out. Elric, seeing the bunny ears on the Dark Prince, almost faints and barfs his guts out as he couldn't handle the cringy look. He hands over a diary and guides him to write down everything he knows about Dragon Tongue magic. If the notes are useful to Elric, he promises to unlock the curse. Later on, Mephis, clearly pissed, says that he endured 1,000 years of imprisonment, and this silly little incantation can't break him. Then Elric gets up to train. A few hours later, when the sun has gone down, the Dark Prince tells Elric that he will be kind and forgive him only if he begs on his knees. But, well, the young Mervinger really doesn't seem to care. Days pass and Elric still hasn't asked for Mephis's help, which makes him pretty bored. So Mephis starts writing down the basics of Dragon Tongue magic while Elric stares at him and calls him a cutie pie. Being the Dark Prince, he takes this as an insult to his ego and decides not to give in. So Elric turns him into a dog in a suit. Then he starts reading the basics of Dragon Tongue magic, but it is ancient knowledge he has never read about. Gaining the knowledge, he turns Mephis back into a human and asks for elaboration on the notes he made. If he finds them pleasing enough, Elric promises to let him talk too. He proceeds to point out that every chapter must be longer than the last, so Mephis has to write another chapter in order to speak for the next 3 days. Elric asks for a few more things to be thrown into the chapters, which enrages Mephis even more, but he chooses to wait because he had some black magic in those chapters, magic that will soon devour Elric's body and soul. A few days later, Elric realizes that just by learning the basics, he has gotten really strong. This confuses Mephis as nothing seems to be happening to Elric even though he clearly hid the black magic in those chapters. Elric catches on from Mephis's expressions and wonders why he looks so stressed. Mephis tries to hide it, but Elric confronts him saying he really thought he was stupid enough to start training without observing things. Hearing that pisses Mephis off as all his hard work of writing the spells goes in vain. But now Elric wants to know more, to which Mephis says that he has nothing left to tell him except for his secret charms. Charms are the highest form of incantation, like the voice of God. Mephis is sure that Elric would not understand even if he told him, and Elric realizes that he's not lying anymore. Then Mephis says magic is perfected on the battlefield, a saying the Mervingus used to go by. Elric knows that this is a phrase from their ancestors who protected their lands from the demons' invasion. His father used to teach him about the history of the family who stood their ground on their war-damaged lands. Though he couldn't talk much due to the after-effects of the war, Elric remembers that he was always reminiscing about the days when he used to fight battles with Elric's grandfather. Little Elric would ask his father if he could use the same magic his grandpa used to cast, and his father would always tell him that to become a great wizard, he should gather knowledge like one first. Using force without knowing the theory would lead to nothing, since his grandpa had also been the greatest scholar before becoming the strongest wizard ever. Elric's father would advise him to follow the guide of Heiser, and his mother would order him to finish reading his lesson by the end of the day. He would act rebellious and say he wanted to play with his dad instead, but Heiser used to grab him by the ear to train him. They indeed had a small happy family. Well, time flew by. Along with his father, his mother fell ill too, and his father shared half his life force with her to keep her alive. He tries taking the blame on him, but Elric's mother tells her husband that she loved sharing every moment with him and their children. But now Elric's father couldn't share his life force any longer. They were both on their deathbeds. Both of the little kids are weeping. His mother told Heist to take care of little Elric, and his father told Elric that it wasn't important to be a wizard, but what truly brought him happiness was being their father. With that said, both of his parents left the world, leaving the two of them alone in this selfish world. Coming back to the present day, Elric thinks his father was wrong about not being a wizard because it's easy to be betrayed when you are weak. To protect himself, Elric will become strong, he promises to himself. The battlefield is where magic is perfected, and with that aim, he knows that real-life practice is what he needs. Elric thinks about going to the haunted Red Forest, but the ghost-like monsters there would be too dangerous. Then he considers the Goblin Cave, but it's too crowded and well-known. Suddenly, he remembers that his father once told him there are sanctuaries all over the continent where their ancestors used to live. He knows where to go now. So he tells Memphis that they are going to the land of ice and snow, the land of the snow people, the Yeti Highland. The next day, Elric took a bath in a lake. He needed to change his appearance so no one would recognize him. Using his magic, he enchanted the water to give him a fresh haircut, change his hair color, and remove all facial hair. By the time he stepped out, he looked like he'd walked off the cover of a Vogue magazine. Later, he made his way to the guild guide where a man led him inside to find his Yeti Highland adventuring party. To Elric's surprise, the adventurers didn't look like adventurers at all. There was a child, 4 herb collectors, 3 monster hunters, and 5 people who were clearly hiding their identities. The child stepped forward and introduced himself with a bright smile, even giving a detailed explanation of his name. His name was Mingma, and he assured everyone that if they followed his lead, everything would be fine. Memphis was already annoyed, but Elric asked Mingma if he could find a telecrystal. Unfortunately, as Mingma explained, there were no telecrystals available. Only carrier pigeons and letters are used in their region. The chatterbox child began to ramble again but quickly remembered they had to leave soon. He promised to continue his tale along the journey. Elric was worried because he needed to contact his sister soon. But for now, he left it up to Sean to figure something out. As their journey began, Mingma immediately started chattering again as if it paid his bills. Before long, they arrived at their destination, the Yeti Highland. Memphis looked around and noted that the place seemed familiar. It was where the Yetis lived. Elric was surprised to hear that Memphis had seen Yetis before, and he asked if they were the same as demons. Memphis responded that Yetis didn't fall into the same category as him, clearly mad at even the reference, but Elric had never realized they were even related. Memphis then mentioned that the former king of the Yetis had a cruel fate. Otherwise, he might have been blessed by the Dark Lord greatly. He wondered aloud if the tomb of the former king was still there. Elric grew curious, but Memphis added that if the tomb had remained, it had likely been robbed long ago. A realization struck the young Mervinger. The tomb of the Yeti leader might be connected to his family, especially since Yetis were tied to demons. Elric remembered how his father once told him that the Mervinger sanctuaries were built by their ancestors to protect their legacy. He had wanted Elric to visit the Yeti Highlands one day to uncover that legacy and pay respects to their ancestors. Back in the present, Elric began to wonder what this legacy could be and glanced at the collar he wore, wondering if it held any information. Meanwhile, Mingma spoke of a myth from his tribe, a tale of a woman betrayed by her husband and left alone in the snowy wilderness. She died, but not permanently. Memphis, growing increasingly irritated, snapped at Elric to cast a spell to shut the chatterbox up. Elric, ever observant, noticed something unsettling. There were no snow people around. Just then, Mingma announced that they were about to enter the tough part of the path after crossing a hill. The group settled down to rest and eat for a while. Elric glanced at the other adventurers and something about them stood out. They didn't seem like ordinary travelers. They resembled knights in service to a noble family. He wondered what their true mission was and whether it had anything to do with him. Among them, one cloaked figure seemed to be their leader. When the cloak came off, it revealed a young woman. At the sight of her, some of the men began to harass her until Chen, one of the knights, stepped forward to defend her, recognizing her noble status. The lady screamed and asked Chen to lower his sword, and he obeyed her, though his rage was apparent. Elric and Mephis quietly watched the commotion. Then without warning, someone shouted for everyone to run. Panic broke out, and people started looking, wondering what's about to happen. There was a sudden and massive attack on the entire team. Everyone immediately began to defend themselves while Chen screamed for them to prioritize defending the noble lady. The whole scene reminded Elric of the den. Multiple Yetis had launched the attack, and Elric quickly formed a magic barrier to guide and protect everyone through his magic, but many were still being taken down. Elric and Mephis exchanged a side glance. Naturally, seeing the humans getting destroyed brought a bit of joy to Mephis. Elric had heard that snow people typically moved in groups of 10, but these numbers were far greater. Chen fought fiercely, determined to wipe out as many of the Yetis as he could. Meanwhile, Mephis couldn't keep his mouth shut with his constant commentary, especially since this was Elric's first ever practice on hardcore difficulty. Wanting to concentrate, Elric silenced Mephis with an incantation. Still, Elric found the experience exhilarating as a first practice. He watched Chen use his knightly aura to decimate the Yetis. Elric wished he could observe more, but he had to join the fight as the invasion of snow people posed a serious threat, and there was a high likelihood that more would follow. If they struck quickly enough, they could take the lead in the battle. Next, Elric deactivated his disguise and summoned his armor. He reminded himself that he had saved this particular spell using Mimize. The Yeti seemed unstoppable, though his presence left them somewhat confused. Elric wasn't sure if his attack spells would be effective on them, but he knew he had to at least slow them down. With that said, Elric began kicking and slaying the monsters, casting various spells such as Explode, Burn, and Penetrate. His powerful attacks killed many of the Yetis, leaving only 2 remaining. The surviving Yetis attempted to silently sneak away, but Elric, ever alert, cleverly cast his bind spell on them before they could escape and save their butts. After killing all the Yetis, Elric panted, yet he loved the experience. He left one of them alive, got on his back after tying him up, and summoned Mephis. He called out for him, not remembering he had tied up Mephis's mouth a while ago, and Mephis was pretty upset about it. Elric released the incantation, and Mephis could speak again. Then Elric asked Mephis to translate whatever the Yeti said. Elric turned to the Yeti and gave him an offer. If he told Elric where his village was, he would let him live. Mephis translated that the Yeti asked to be untied and promised he would tell Elric everything. Elric was a bit hesitant, but Mephis said that negotiation through conversation would be better in circumstances like this. So Elric snapped his fingers and released the ties on the Yeti. Mephis began to whisper something to him, and the Yeti smiled at Elric in an evil way. What Mephis had said to the Yeti was to team up and wreck Elric. The Yeti suddenly moved to attack Elric, but his fast thinking saved him, and Elric bound the Yeti again. Now the Yeti and Mephis were both scared of Elric. Since Elric had regained the lead, the Yeti decided to show the way. Elric gave Mephis a polite reminder that back in the day, Mephis had killed the innocent snow people. Suddenly, Elric stopped. He thought about how the powers of the ancient proto-dragon and Mephis were stored in his heart and that he was only able to use 3% of their actual potential. If he were to use all of that power beyond his current limits, his body would explode, and he would die. He realized that fighting like this could get him killed, yet he didn't want to give up since he wanted to restore the honor of his family's name. Elric thought about the noble lady and wondered if she was okay. On the other hand, Chen and the other knights had defended themselves, but the noble lady noticed that one of them was missing. Chen assured her that he must have run away or hidden himself, but that didn't stop her from worrying. Back to the young Mervinger, he reached the village of the Yetis and told them to lead him to their leader. Hearing this, the Yetis made way for the leader, and he came near Elric. Although Elric was a bit afraid, he proceeded to ask his questions. Under his cloak, he was protecting himself. If things went south, he'd have to take down the leader first. The leader of the Yetis noticed his green eyes and asked Elric for his name. Elric introduced himself, and the Yeti began to lead him somewhere. They walked as the Yeti told him that there used to be a legend in his tribe. Ages ago, there lived a mighty king who ruled the snowy mountains. There was a human being who was the king's only friend. The human had shiny green eyes and went by the name of Mervinger. That shocked Elric as his ancestor had been a friend to the king of the snow people. Furthermore, the Yeti said that the leaders of his tribe had been taking care of the human's house for generations. Elric wondered where the house was located, and the Yeti pointed deep into the cliffs, revealing its location. After focusing for a bit, Elric realized that there really was a house down there. The leaders said they went down there once a year when the winds were quiet. Mephis once again started with his commentary that Elric needed a powerful spell to go down there or else he'd die if he didn't use one. But Elric, knowing he could die from the winds too, still ended up surprising Mephis and jumped down the cliff with a smile on his face. As soon as Elric jumps, Mephis thinks he's a lunatic but follows him, certain that Elric is going to die. Elric notices that the winds are way stronger than he expected them to be. Mephis seems to care about him and tells him to concentrate or he will end up losing his life. So Elric focuses and takes one step at a time, landing on the ground after jumping various times on the cliff as if he's walking. As he reaches the ground, he sits down and says to Mephis, "That's how he works." Then Elric makes his way toward the house and sees that the door is locked with ancient magic. After thinking for a bit, Mephis suggests that he should try entering a mana pattern in words. So Elric tries various words like Dark Prince, Mervinger, Demon Hunter, Yeti, etc., but none of them work. Elric wonders if there is something else that would work besides the mana pattern, something more like a key. He picks up his collar, points it at the door, and the door unlocks as it was the key to the house. He looks at the house from the inside, and it is humongous and well preserved. It has a lot of books. He picks up a book named Fundamental Principles of Wizardry. He knows he's gonna find a good fortune of knowledge over here. Meanwhile, Mephis looks around knowing that this is the residence of the Winter Sage. Elric hears that and pops out wondering what he is talking about. Mephis brushes it off. Elric can't help but think that something must have happened to him since he knows the king of the Snow People and his ancestor. Then he looks at a book named The History of Mervingus. Elric flips open the book and reads that destroying evil in its path is the sole duty of their family. That's what he heard in his dream as well. He reads further that TGE mission was bestowed upon their family by fate, and it is very much achievable. If only they could ingest them properly, swinging at evil again and again could bring about a new wave in wizardry. The book also says to eat, swallow, and drink, which means to feast on evil until he is full of it and then turn it into something meaningful. Suddenly, his collar begins to shine and crackle, and the collar says to him, "Young Mervinger, you have passed the test of Grand Collar of Wizardry and swallowed your first cup of evil, and now the next path shall begin." Suddenly, Elric opens his eyes into a strange place. He gets up and hears someone approaching him. The man says that he must be the young blood from the future who came to take over their duties. Elric gets up, and the man introduces himself as Ottohan Mervinger, the guide of the young Mervinger to their family's fate. He was one of the top 5 ancestors of the Mervinger family and was the first to systematize the family's magic. Elric asks him if he is the Winter Sage, and Ottohan wonders how he knows that. Elric elaborates that Mephisto told him that and suddenly realizes that Mephis is not with him. Ottohan realizes that the first cup of evil that he swallowed is the Dark Prince. Ottohan seems proud that his descendants are doing better than he expected. Meanwhile, on Mephis' side, he's just hanging out at the Mervinger house alone. Elric quickly asks what Otto meant by the fate he speaks of. Ottohan smiles and keeps his hand on Elric's head, knowing he must have quite a lot of queries regarding why they have to learn it this way instead of just being taught. So he answers that the family has prepared something like a cartwheel. Once it begins to roll, they can't ever stop it. With that said, he releases a load of his mana. Then he continues that they couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands, so this is why they test their descendants even if it takes ages. But since Elric has passed their test, he gets to decide if he should stop the cartwheel or let it roll. Elric still doesn't understand the will of his family, but he decides to go with it to restore his family's honor and succeed the will of his grandfather and ancestors, the true heroes of the Empire. This would also make him known as a great wizard, which has been a lifelong dream of his. Ottohan lets the ball of magic slide from his hand, which bursts with a huge flame, which paves a way. Hearing Elric, he gets pretty excited to see the ambition, then takes him to the cold freezing mountains. Elric wonders where they are, and Ottohan makes him aware that this is where he will be tested for his first mission. The weather is making Elric shiver, but he knows that if he passes this, he will become insanely powerful, and the thought makes him smile, something that impresses Ottohan greatly, seeing the ambition of a Mervinger. Then Ottohan points at a place of darkness, and after focusing for a bit, Elric sees a figure tied up in the darkness and wonders what that is. Ottohan tells him that it is the Mountain King, who is the only man to ever rule these mountains. The Mountain King had a dream of bringing the Snow People back to being demons before they were cast out. His motivation got the best of him, and this corrupt evil spirit is what became of him as narrated by Ottohan. Furthermore, Ottohan tells Elric that the second cup of evil that he will swallow is the Mountain King. Hearing that, Elric almost pisses his pants, unsure how he will fight him, but Ottohan tells him that he has to devour it. Further, he explains to Elric that from now on, he must devour the demons and rid them of their life source, the seal. Elric doesn't know what that is, to which Ottohan explains that demons are born when dark primitive emotions of the living, such as fear, depression, and resentment, gather around a conscience of their own, better known as an ego. A demon's ego is what decides the nature, rank, and identity of the demon, and the seal is the heart of the demon in which the ego is stored. Ottohan points at Elric's arm and tells him that on his arm is the core of Mephisto's identity. It's the seal of the Dark Prince. What Elric has to do is hunt them down and rob them of the root of their identity. Devouring a demon will make their powers his. Then Ottohan begins to walk away while Elric wonders how much stronger he will be if he can have that monstrous power for himself. The last thing Ottohan said to him was that he is trying to devour the demon, not trying to defeat it. Then Elric flies toward the region, wondering what Ottohan meant, emphasizing the word devouring. The Mountain King feels the energy of Mephisto and Mervinga, and now they have to prove themselves to him. The Mountain King orders his minions, the guards of the king, to stop Elric. Elric observes that there are so many of them, and each one is more powerful than the ones he has fought until now, especially the Mountain King himself. He knows that if he could use a seal of original sin and the abilities of the Dark Prince, he could wipe out all of them, including the mountain. But the problem is he doesn't know how to use it. Using his powers on his first test feels kind of like cheating, so he uses Magic Explode to create an explosion. What he wasn't expecting was something sharp in front of his face, and at that moment, he seemed pretty much fearful. Then Elric proceeds to use his spells Rise and Penetrate against all the snow people, which proves to be a good strategy to defend himself. After that, Elric says to them that before they were cast out, they were demons, and so they should understand what happens to those who don't have power. Hearing that, the snow people become furious and charge at him, determined to end him. But the young Mervinga has a resilient spirit and knows that this challenge means nothing to him as he can only get stronger by overcoming it. He raises his hand and attacks them again, but it ends up backfiring and hitting him instead of the snow people, causing him to fall back. The guards stand ready with their swords raised while he thinks that he might lose, but he knows he can't just give in at his first real hardship like this. He tries to get up, though he doesn't know if his body will hold out. Suddenly, dark energy surrounds him, catching the guards by surprise. Elric looks at the guards, rage apparent on his face, and charges at them again. The energy emitting from him comes from the dragon heart, and he uses the same mana to fight back against the guards. Furthermore, he casts his spells Bloom and Scatter. Panting after using the spells, he runs away from the guards after taking down one of them. Elric falls to the ground, barely able to believe how tough the situation is, especially since all the soldiers are now coming back to life. He knows he has to think quickly about what to do next instead of allowing himself to be tired. Suddenly, something begins to attack him. He doesn't know quite what it is and tries to defend himself from it, but it turns out to be the seal. He thinks to himself that it's not as clear as the seal of the original sun, but it's definitely something new. He's not entirely sure what it is, but it provides a soothing feeling to his dragon heart and keeps it from bursting. Maybe this is why the demons called the seal by their proper names. Furthermore, he realizes that this is why they have to know the demons' real names to harness their true power just as Ottohan had taught him. Though Elric wonders how he will discover their real names since they won't simply reveal them if he asks casually, Ottohan had assured him that when the time comes, he will feel the name himself. As more soldiers approach him, Elric begins to channel mana into the palms of his hands. He thinks to himself that the proper name of the snow people is ruthlessness. He can't explain why, but he just knows how to use the seal. With his magic, he clears a path away from the snow people, confident now that he knows their true name, Ruthless. It definitely takes a significant chunk of mana. But with a smile on his face, Elric thinks to himself that it looks like he used the power of the seal correctly, and now there are only a few more enemies left to take down. Suddenly, he collapses to the ground, not knowing exactly what just happened as the darkness spreads through his vision. Suddenly, Elric opens his eyes, sweating, in his grandfather's house while lying on the ground, unable to process what just happened. He hears Mephis, who observes him with a smirk and comments that it looks like Elric has been through a lot. Elric can't believe Mephis is with him again. Mephis explains that Elric's little necklace was rattling the whole time, so he thought Elric was having another devouring session, and it seems like Elric found it hard to devour this time. Poor Elric, still sweating, wonders if he wasn't dead this entire time. He must have blacked out after using up all of his mana, and when he overdid it with the seal, he lost consciousness. Still, despite all of that, he exceeds all his expectations. He thinks that if the incomplete seal of ruthlessness is this powerful, he can't even imagine how strong the seal of original sin would be. Yet he doesn't know how to use either of them. Mephis then asks if that was the seal of ruthlessness, and if so, he is sure that it was the Winter Sage who did that to him. Elric asks Mephis how to use the seal of original sin. Mephis realizes that he has already told Elric about proper names and everything, but he also makes it clear that he won't reveal a single bit about it. No matter what kind of humiliation Elric puts him through, Mephis will never open his mouth. Elric, realizing how serious the situation is, nervously says that Mephis doesn't need to get so serious about it. He was just asking. However, Elric already saw that response coming. After all, a seal means everything to a demon, and asking about it is like asking to have everything taken away from him. So for now, Elric has to give up. Although Elric knows that the seal of original sin is the seal of the Dark Prince, he thinks that if using the seal of ruthlessness was enough to knock him out, then he won't be able to use the seal of original sin anyway. Then Elric asks Mephis if he knows the Mountain King, and Mephis admits that he does but asks why Elric wants to know. Elric explains that he has been told this is the Mountain King's grave and that he has to defeat him here, which greatly surprises Mephis. Mephis knew Ottohan was mad, but he never thought he would be insane enough to send Elric against someone as powerful as the Mountain King. Elric smiles and asks if Mephis has any ideas, but Mephis immediately shakes his head in refusal. Elric tries to convince him, saying that the Mountain King isn't even a demon anymore, so it should be fine to tell him. That infuriates Mephis, who screams if Elric really expects him to tell the biggest secret of their kind, which could be their greatest weakness. Elric puts up an offer, 3 days without the spell of cuteness. Mephis refuses, so Elric sweetens the deal, 5 days without the spell of cuteness. Now that sounds appealing to Mephis and he agrees, referring to himself as the benevolent prince. Elric laughs, realizing it only took 5 days to convince him. Now Mephis gets serious. He says that the way Elric is now, he won't even be able to approach the Mountain King, let alone pass his ancestors' test. Still grinning, Mephis says that there is a way he can take. The next thing Elric knows, he finds himself back in the cold mountains, determined to make good use of the hint Mephis gave him. The hint was that he needs to improve his achievement status depending on a seal's rarity. It can be ranked as normal, great, prestigious, original, or mythical. Each of these ranks requires a certain level of achievement that determines his proficiency with the seal. Mephis also told him that the seal of ruthlessness is a prestigious rank, which is relatively high. At the moment, Elric's achievement status is 1 star at most, while the Mountain King's seal is 10 stars. So he needs to raise his achievement to 10 stars or become an original rank wizard himself. Elric can't believe that he's only at 1 star, but he is motivated to show everyone the grit of a Mervinger. He doesn't care if he has to do it 100 or 1,000 times. He will devour all of them. Now Elric finds himself in the cold mountains again, facing the Mountain King once more. He knows that battling all the soldiers only raised his achievement status to 2 stars, which means he will have to battle the Mountain King directly to raise his stars further. He sees the black cloud of dark energy, which at first he thought was just the shadow of the Mountain King. He wonders how powerful the Mountain King must be to still be this strong even after death. He questions whether Ottohan actually wants him dead considering the task has been given. Nonetheless, Elric is still motivated to devour the Mountain King. But suddenly, Elric opens his eyes once more in his grandfather's house. He laughs, saying that he tried super hard to collect the seal but didn't even see it coming. However, he feels a bit concerned about how he is supposed to beat something that powerful. Mephis tries to lure him into giving up, but Elric loves the idea of devouring something that strong. A greedy look appears on his face, which Mephis notices. Then something unexpected happens. Elric asks Mephis if the Mountain King was actually a female, which makes Mephis visibly flinch. Elric stares at him, and Mephis gets weirded out, asking why he's looking at him like that. That's when Elric realizes that something must have happened between the Mountain King and the Dark Prince, something fishy and fruity, something he will find out with time. His priority right now is to devour the Mountain King even though he's not exactly sure how he's going to do it. But one thing is certain, he will figure it out after he beats her to the ground. Elric leaps towards the Ice Mountain King yelling at her to die. The Ice Mountain King uses her ice spell on Elric. Elric feels the pain in his body and head. After that, Elric breaks the Ice Mountain King's ice spell, realizing that he is slowly getting closer to her little by little and can finally see her face. The Ice Mountain King growls at Elric, and he realizes how to use the Ice Mountain King's seal of cruelty. Elric knows that it is difficult for someone like him who had just attained the seal to surpass the being who had already mastered it. He thinks with determination that he will surpass it. The Ice Mountain King growls again at Elric, and he presses his palm against the Ice Mountain King's palm. Elric mutters that he will surpass it even if he has to steal everything from the Ice Mountain King. The Ice Mountain King throws Elric away with her ice spell, and Elric falls down. Ottohan watches the scene and thinks that it would not be strange for Elric's ego if he keeps dying like this. He sees that Elric is still smiling and realizes that Elric not only has innate talent, but also possesses an unsubmitting will and an endless desire to improve himself. Seeing Elric cutting the Ice Mountain King's arm, Ottohan realizes that Elric is someone who would never appear even in their family. He believes that Elric is a lunatic. Elric chuckles, saying that he has reached the 3 to 5 star level. In an instant, the Ice Mountain King attacks Elric. Elric tries to defend himself, saying that the Ice Mountain King doesn't even give him time to breathe. Elric uses his powers to protect himself from the spell of the Ice Mountain King. Feeling his powers weaken against her, Elric curses and wonders if this is his limit. He realizes that just stealing is not enough to defeat the Ice Mountain King, and he must become her. Elric's tattooed hand glows and he feels his body weakening. He wonders if he died again. After that, Elric glances into the memories of the Ice Mountain King. Elric sees Mephisto coming towards the Ice Mountain King and asking her to prove that she is worthy enough to be part of their race. Seeing this, Elric wonders what in the world is happening. Elric watches the past of the Ice Mountain King and sees that their demon god, their queen, the leader of the Highlands, has delivered them an oracle. Elric sees that the Ice Mountain King was born as the king who would come to rule the Ice Mountain, but she could not be satisfied with just the Ice Mountain even though she was the first in the history of the Ice Mountain to unite the tribes. The Ice Mountain King decided to reclaim their former glory, saying that since they were once part of the almighty demon race, they would once again return to their rightful place. Elric sees in the memories of the Ice Mountain King that beyond the ordinary Ice Mountain, they made countless humans and demons kneel before them, and at last, they once again became part of the demon race. And even further, the Ice Mountain King tried to become a demon king, but the wall of an almighty demon king, Mephistopheles, was too high, and the Ice Mountain King had no choice but to taste the bitterness of defeat. Nevertheless, the Ice Mountain King never stopped and did whatever it took to polish her true name and evolve her seal. The Ice Mountain King tells Elric that she took the first step and that he could receive Mephistopheles' acknowledgement, but she was blocked by a wall steeper than anything she had ever faced before. All forces charged against her team, and her comrades began begging for their lives. The Ice Mountain King yelled at them, reminding them that they were members of the proud demon race and that there was nothing they could not accomplish. She tells Elric that she saw Ottohan moving or attacking them relentlessly. That was how they lost the war against the humans led by Ottohan and were driven back to the Ice Mountain. The Ice Mountain King had shouted at Ottohan, asking why humans, who already had everything, could not allow creatures like them to have even a small part of it. Sobbing, the Ice Mountain King looks at Elric and slowly stands. Elric watches her with sorrow, then cups his chin and says that despite her despair, she endured countless hardships to reclaim the glory of her race. He tells her that he appreciates her, recognizing that it is a great and noble duty. In the past, after that battle, Ottohan settled in the Ice Mountain to keep watch over her. Through countless battles, the two came to respect each other and spent a long time together. However, the Ice Mountain King, unable to free herself completely from her ambitions, eventually became a monster and met her end at Ottohan's hands. In the present, the Ice Mountain King tells Elric that he must be the descendant Ottohan once spoke about. Smiling at Elric, she says that seeing how he erased a portion of her mania and even severed her arm, it seems Ottohan's boasts were not mistaken. Elric immediately apologizes, expressing regret for her lost arm. The Ice Mountain King chuckles and tells him that even though she ended up like this, unable to abandon her ambitions, she is still a king and a warrior who once led her race. She says she does not need pity from her enemy. Hearing this, Elric is sort of shocked. The Ice Mountain King continues, saying that it seems the time has finally come to end this long battle. She says it is time for her to apologize to her people and honor their sacrifices. She admits that she regrets ever desiring to be part of the demon race, realizing now that simply being happy with those she loved would have been enough. Watching her, Elric realizes that the Ice Mountain King is being consumed by demonic energy. He wonders what he should do. As he sees her awaken her powers, he reminds himself that his opponent is the Ice Mountain King, the ruler who united the vast Ice Mountain, the greatest warrior of the Yetis, and an enemy he must overcome. Elric knows he must use his full strength to defeat her, both out of necessity and as a sign of respect. Resolute, Elric decides to show her the greatness she had built. They lock eyes, gritting their teeth, the rage in their glowing eyes burning brighter than ever. The next second, they get into a battle against each other while using their powers. The Ice Mountain King attacks Elric with her axe, and he grits his teeth knowing he has to become him. They continue to fight, and Elric begins to feel strange as he finds himself enjoying it even though this is clearly a battle with his life on the line. Elric attacks on the Ice Mountain King with full rage and wonders why it feels fun. He realizes that he can feel the days full of happiness that the Ice Mountain King spent with Ottohan. The Ice Mountain King pushes Elric away, but he blocks his attack. They both leap and land in front of each other once again, having reached their limits. They prepare for the final blow, knowing the battle will be decided at this moment with the technique that brought countless races to their knees, which is the Ice Mountain King's secret art, Icebreaker. They both glare at each other and press their palms together. The ice begins to crack, and Elric unleashes the final blow. The Ice Mountain King chuckles and thanks Elric in the end. Elric looks down and widens his eyes as he sees the tears into the Ice Mountain King's face. Then the Ice Mountain King smiles and begins to disappear into a glowing light. As she vanishes completely, Elric notices the flowers blooming on the place where she once stood. He wishes for her soul to rest in peace and realizes that his first assignment has come to an end. Ottohan claps for Elric and compliments him, saying that he actually managed to swallow the Ice Mountain King. Elric asks him if the first assignment is way too hard from the start. Ottohan replies that anything goes in their family. He says to Elric that he cannot call himself a mervinger if he cannot overcome something like this. Elric sighs and realizes that this is why Sean calls mervingers egoistical. Ottohan walks towards Elric and admits that he is still surprised. He tells Elric that even if he has talent, he thought it would take him at least 1 to 3 years. Ottohan says to Elric that he never imagined that a person like him, who has only learned magic for a few years, managed to defeat the Ice Mountain King. Elric corrects Ottohan, saying that it has only been a month since he learned magic. Elric counts on his fingers and states that since he spent a month here, it has been 2 months now. Ottohan says to Elric that he is bad at joking. Elric looks at him with a stern look, and Ottohan asks him if it is really not some egotistical mervinger joke. Elric sighs and Ottohan laughs. He hugs Elric saying that he sure has an eye for people. Elric tries to quote what Ottohan was just saying earlier. Ottohan curses Elric while laughing and hugs him more tightly. Elric winces in pain as Ottohan's beard hurts him. After that, Ottohan then wonders what the final moments of the Ice Mountain King were like. Elric replies that she was smiling and hearing that Ottohan feels relieved. Elric bows and thanks him for everything. Ottohan advises Elric to be careful on his way back. Elric tells him that he probably won't be able to visit often, to which Ottohan reassures him that he understands. The position of the lord of a family is a busy one. Elric begins to leave, but suddenly he turns back around and asks Ottohan how he will get out of here. Ottohan chuckles and says to Elric that he has already gone out countless times. He asks Elric if he does not remember it. Elric looks at him in confusion as Ottohan throws an ice crystal towards Elric. Elric finds himself back at the place and curses at Ottohan. He is worried about his handsome face and size. Mephisto laughs at Elric, saying that it looks like Ottohan killed him. Elric yells, asking who killed someone without warning. Mephisto asks Elric if he has devoured the Ice Mountain King. Elric uncovers his tattooed hand and replies that it just happened. Mephisto chuckles and claims that this is all thanks to his support. Elric agrees, calling Mephisto the best demon. He says to Mephisto that he sure flipped the stage upside down. Hearing this, Mephisto looks at him in disbelief, thinking that all he did was tell him a few things and he transcends the realm of a genius, which leaves Mephisto wondering if Elric is the monster. Elric tells Mephisto that he is curious about something. He asks Mephisto if he was in a special relationship with the Ice Mountain King and why he stopped her from becoming a demon. Mephisto asks Elric how he does know about it. Elric smirks and replies that he ended up taking a glance into the Ice Mountain King's memories. Mephisto answers his question, saying that he is a demon king and the Ice Mountain King is the dregs of the demon race and there is nothing more about it. Mephisto explains that at that time, he was just bored, but he heard there was someone who stated that they will become a demon in the Ice Mountain, so he went to see what they looked like. He tells Elric that the Ice Mountain King was a bit lacking to become a demon king, but her ambition and skill were commendable. Mephisto states that if the one that the Ice Mountain King met was not a benevolent king like him and someone like Azazel or Lilith instead, she would have been blown to bits. Mephisto adds that in any case, he told the Ice Mountain King to come find him again after she had gotten stronger and just left her. Elric asks Mephisto if that is all, and he never meets the Ice Mountain King again. He yells at Elric and asks why in the world he would meet her. Elric watches the memories of the Ice Mountain King and Ottohan and understands what happened. He chuckles and Mephisto asks him what he understood. Elric giggles and asks Mephisto if he knows the way that brats bully the girls they love one-sidedly. Mephisto yells at Elric asking what he is talking about. Elric mocks Mephisto, saying that is why he is still single after over 1,000 years. Mephisto curses at Elric asking how he dares to mock him. Elric continues to mock him, calling him single. Mephisto yells at Elric to die. On the other hand, Ottohan punches the sky, thinking what an amusing descendant he was. He internally asks the Ice Mountain King if she thinks the same. Ottohan internally asks her if he resents him. He gets flashbacks of the Ice Mountain King crying while holding the baby in her hands because she killed him by her own hands. She looked at Ottohan and begged him to kill her. Coming out from the memories, Ottohan presses his palms together. He apologizes to the Ice Mountain King. He looks up at the sky and asks the Ice Mountain King to leave her regrets and duty to that child and rest in peace. Ottohan continues looking up at the sky and asks the Ice Mountain King to meet him again in the next life. He sighs, hoping that it will be more beautiful than before. Mephisto asks Elric what he is rummaging around for. Elric goes through the book and replies that he is looking for something. Elric rolls an ice crystal with his fingers and Mephisto asks if it is an ice crystal. Elric recalls his previous conversation with Ottohan. Ottohan throws an ice crystal towards Elric and asks him to take this and find the god of camellia. Elric asks Ottohan if he means the camellia flower. Ottohan confirms Elric's question, saying that person will become his new guide. Elric asks Ottohan if this is also an assignment. Ottohan replies that it is. Elric questions how long he has to do the assignments for because he will become a bent-over geezer at this rate. Ottohan replies to Elric that it will be until he reaches the level of their progenitor. Elric looks at Ottohan in confusion, and he says to Elric that he knows that he must have a lot of questions, but they will all be answered naturally with time. Ottohan explains that the progenitor has both accomplished and left many things in this land. Ottohan tells Elric that they have prepared many assignments for him to follow the progenitor, so all he needs to do is diligently walk that path. Elric agrees, saying that he will just make sure to take this ice crystal with him. Ottohan apologizes to Elric for placing this heavy burden on him, saying that this path is one that only he, the Lord of Mervinga, can walk. He asks Elric to go and perfect the winter. Elric informs Mephisto that he has been told to take this ice crystal to the god of Camellia. Mephisto laughs and says that Ottohan is trying to create winter. He asks Mephisto if he knows what winter means. Mephisto replies that he knows about it as there are 4 abdominal seasons that haunted demon kings like him. Elric requests Mephisto to tell him more about it in detail. Mephisto asks Elric why he would. Elric offers the Egio exemption for 4 days. Mephisto smirks, asking how long the Egio exemption will work for. Elric grits his teeth and adds a mute exemption to his offer, saying that he will not do more than this. Mephisto chuckles and agrees. Mephisto begins to explain that there are 4 retainers that assisted their progenitor in raising the foundation of Mervinga. Mephisto tells Elric that their names are Summer, Autumn, Spring, and Winter. Because their personalities and characters fit each of the seasons, the demons called them the 4 seasons. He informs Elric that among them, Ottohan corresponded to winter. Mephisto says to Elric that, in any case, the fact that someone like that stayed behind as a guide to the assignments, which would mean that Ottohan is trying to pass down the power he once had to him. Hearing this, Elric wonders if once this assignment is done, he can also receive assignments from the other 4 seasons. Obtaining the powers of the 4 seasons would mean he could become as strong as the progenitor whom they assisted. Elric looks at his tattooed hand and thinks if he can continue to absorb seals as powerful as the seal of cruelty or even stronger, so it won't be impossible to rebuild the family. He asks Mephisto what is important about this ice crystal for the god of Camellia to need it. Mephisto replies that the ice crystal is the core of winter, formed only in the deepest parts of an ice mountain covered in perpetual snow. Mephisto adds that, in other words, it is the egg of a spirit. And since the camellia is a flower that blooms in winter, there is no better flower pot than the ice crystal. Elric asks where he has to go to meet the god of Camellia. Mephisto replies that it is probably in the Temple of Flowers somewhere in the north. Elric looks at Mephisto in disbelief and confesses that he has only heard about it in stories. He asks Mephisto if it really exists. Mephisto confirms his suspicion and replies that the noisy bastard is probably guarding the temple. Elric knows that he can only be sure after he looks through the records in the Imperial Library. He stares at Mephisto and realizes that he is being too friendly. Elric wonders what Mephisto is planning this time. Elric sees that Mephisto's spirit form became a bit more vivid. Mephisto smirks, realizing that Elric seems to have noticed that his power has returned a little. He chuckles, thinking that Elric has no choice but to become stronger through the assignments. Elric realizes that even though the assignments make him stronger, they also make Mephisto stronger at the same time. He thinks that he may be reviving a great demon king that will plunge this world into distress. Mephisto notices the off look on Elric's face and chuckles, thinking that Elric must be afraid. Mephisto knows that he is uncomfortable with leaving Mervinga to become stronger, but it cannot be helped because his recovery takes priority. He sees Elric smiling creepily and wonders why he is smiling again and if he has gone mad. Elric giggles, thinking that it means he can take even more from Mephisto. He knows that for Mephisto to regain his power and escape from him, will have to become stronger. Elric says to Mephisto that since he has done everything he needed to, they shall head back up. As they begin to go, Elric tells Mephisto that it was hard enough to head down there just a month ago, but now it is a piece of cake. Mephisto says to Elric that he is truly egotistical to the core. Elric asks Mephisto if he shall head to where the Crimson Eye tribe is since he needs a guide. Elric knows that he is not sure if it is because he has been at a quarrel with Yetis for such a long time or because he has swallowed the Ice Mountain King seal, but he kind of wants to see them. Elric's eyes widen when he sees the dead bodies of Yetis and blood everywhere. He wonders what in the world happened here. Mephisto looks around and remarks that seeing that they were killed slowly when they could have been killed instantly, they must have been used for entertainment. Mephisto says that he does not know who did this, but they have a nature far more atrocious than most demons. Elric states that he is feeling like shit. He thinks that since Yetis are monsters, they can die at any time. Elric knows that even though he has killed many Yetis, he has never once treated them as playthings. Elric grits his teeth when he feels a discomforting feeling. He wonders if it is because he swallowed the Ice Mountain King's judy. Elric calms down, reminding himself that he is not the Ice Mountain King and he has no right to feel sympathy for the Yetis. In the next moment, he spots something under the snow layer. He begins to dig under the snow and takes out the dead body of the child. Elric yells in sorrow when he realizes that this is the child who welcomed him with excitement when he came here before. He asks Mephisto if this is the work of those people from earlier. Mephisto confirms his question, and Elric wonders why they are making him feel like a shit so much. Chen shields Isabel from the assassins. She screams and falls down. Ed and Chen pick her up and ask if she is alright. Isabel reassures them that she is alright and asks them not to worry about her. She commands them to focus on finding the grave since they don't know when the assassins will come again. Ed insists that she should rest for now. Isabel states that she is a child of the Blue Lion. She tells them that she does not want to be a burden to them all any longer. Ed and Chen look at Isabel in concern, and she takes out the map thinking that many people died because of the assassins chasing after her. And for them, she cannot afford to collapse here. Isabel realizes that it has already been a month since they have been searching for the grave. She wonders where in the world it is. Isabel looks up at the sky and misses her father. While passing through the corridor of the palace of the Blue Lion family, Isabel hears two men gossiping about how talentless and useless she is as she cannot even swing a sword properly. She tries to swing the swords but fails again. Isabel wonders why she does not have talent. She recalls all the bad comments that she has ever received and wonders if she can even call herself a child of the Blue Lion. Isabel's father, Blue Lion, Herman Weil, calls her out from behind and sits beside her. He says to Isabel that he is sorry to place such a heavy burden on her. Isabel cuts through his words, saying that it is all because she is not good enough. Herman Weil reassures Isabel that there is no need for her to follow in his footsteps and become the Blue Lion. He reminds her that she is not the Blue Lion, but she is a proud member of the Weil family. She tries to argue, but Herman chuckles saying that he is still fit as a fiddle. He asks her not to worry about him and says that he will continue to chase his dream of becoming the best swordsman on the continent. Hearing this, Isabel smiles and closes her teary eyes. After that, Herman Weil falls sick, and Isabel asks the doctor why he is not waking up. The doctor replies that these are similar symptoms to blockage disease. The doctor explains that Herman Weil's mana has gone haywire because he used aura too recklessly. The doctor warns Isabel that if they don't take measures soon, Herman Weil's muscles will atrophy. He says that the problem will be resolved if they restore his mana flow, but it is almost impossible with human ability because Herman Weil just has too much mana. The doctor says to Isabel that at this point, they have no choice but to depend on a magic tool. Isabel leaves the palace with her servants in determination to save her father. Because regular items are completely useless for her father's treatment, she was desperate for an advanced magic tool that the magic tower or the academy possessed, but it was useless even with their magic tools. Even though she scoured the entire continent without rest, she couldn't find a single clue that would help in treating her father. Isabel hears a man talking about the grave of the king that ruled the Ice Mountain in the Yeti Highlands and the possibilities of treasures there. She hears that the man is planning to rob the magic tools from there. Then the other man curses at the first man and asks if he wants to be eaten by Yetis just for a myth. After researching that grave as if grasping at straws, Isabel found out that the grave existed and even figured out where it may be. But a problem arose because this fact happened to reach the ears of Isabel's uncle, Paul Weil, who was waiting for an opportunity to take the Blue Lion's seat and sent assassins to kill her. Isabel grits her teeth and wonders just how deep their monstrosity is. The assassins continue to attack Isabel's team, and Chen asks her to hide. Ed holds Isabel's hand and hides behind the huge stone with her. Chen looks at Hanul, and he says to Chen that they all have been looking all over for him. Isabel looks at the Blue Wolf's 6th unit and realizes that Paul Weil has secretly raised them. Hanul says to Chen that since he is still a member of the Weil family, he will at least end him quickly. He says to Chen that since he is here, Isabel must be nearby. Chen yells at Hanul not to speak nonsense, saying that he will pay for the lives of Isaac and Zard with his life. Isabel tries to confront Hanul, but Ed stops her, saying that she must not go and they cannot stop them with just this. She insists Ed to let her go because Chen will die at this rate. Ed says to Isabel that Chen is risking his life to buy them enough time to run away. He asks Isabel if she is planning on wasting Chen's sacrifice. Isabel grits her teeth and Hanul warns her to come out, saying that her royal servant Chen will die at this rate. Chen tells him that Isabel is long gone. Hanul smirks and says that to think Isabel abandoned her loyal knights, she is quite cold-hearted. He states that now he will be cutting off Chen's head. Hanul swings his sword towards Chen. Seeing this, Isabel immediately comes out from behind the stone and yells at Hanul to stop. She asks Hanul with tears to kill her instead and let Chen ho. Hanul apologizes, saying that they have been ordered to kill everyone who is related or has witnessed this event. He says to Isabel that only if she hadn't run, everyone would have been alive and lived their lives happily with their families. Hanul tells her that it is truly a pity. Hearing this, Isabel realizes that innocent people died for someone like her. She decides to end this, but suddenly Hanno sees someone on the tree branch and asks who is there. Elric transforms and replies that he is just a passing Satan. The assassins look up at Elric, and he curses at them. Hanel asks Elric if he is some sort of demon worshipper and if that is some sort of avant-garde bullshit. He says to Elric that he would have lived if he had just passed. Hanel's eyes widen when Elric uses his magic spell and lands on the ground. Hanel asks Elric who the hell he is. Elric asks Isabel if she is alright. Isabel looks at Elric with astonishment and replies that she is alright and asks him if he is okay too. Elric replies that he is. Seeing Elric on the ground, the Blue Wolves wonder if all the magicians usually land like that. The Blue Wolves wonder why Elric is not getting up or if he may be embarrassed. Elric gets up and states that he would have made a badass entrance if it were not for the snow. Hanul looks at Elric in confusion and Isabel wonders if Elric is the person who went missing. She realizes that she can't let Elric get caught up in this. Isabel requests Elric to run away, saying that this does not concern him. Hanul says to Isabel that he already told her that they won't be leaving any witnesses. He commands his team to eliminate Elric. Seeing this, Elric looks at Hanul and says that something like benevolence is wasted on trash like him. He throws his Augusta spell on the Blue Wolf members who came to attack him and gets into a battle against them. Isabel and Ed watches the scene in disbelief and Hanul asks what in the world is happening. Hanul orders his members to hurry up and kill Elric. He commands them not to give Elric the time to chant. When a member of the Blue Wolves raises his sword towards Elric, Elric blocks his attack and asks him who allowed that. He smoothly penetrates them and they begin to struggle against his spell. Seeing this, Hanul yells at Elric, asking who he is and if he is doing this all the while knowing who they are. Elric chuckles and replies that he does not care who they are. He teases Hanul, saying that they should bow down first. Hanul grits his teeth and then says to Elric that he will kill him. Isabel watches them with Ed and Chen and wonders who in the world Elric is because he is overpowering the Blue Wolves so easily. She thinks that Elric is definitely a powerful magician, but it feels dangerous because he will be in trouble if she gets close to him. Hanul leaps towards Elric with his sword, saying that he will kill him. Elric looks up at him and realizes that he is fast. Isabel comes out and yells at Hanul to keep his distance from Elric. Elric uses his Iron Man and reinforcement spell and creates ice rocks in front of him. Hanul smirks and asks Elric if he seriously thinks that he can block him with magic like this. Hanul breaks the ice rocks in rage and yells at Elric stating that this is the end. Elric again creates a huge ice rock in front of him and Hanul tries to break it. Hanul asks why this is not breaking. Elric chuckles and mocks Hanul, saying that the more important is that his head is going to be buried into the ground. Hanul panics and Elric uses his final spell and ends them all. Seeing all of this, Ed remarks that it is unbelievable that Elric wiped out the Blue Wolves in an instant. Chen adds that it is also unbelievable to think that there was a magician like that on the hillside. Isabel looks at Elric and wonders how he can be so powerful when he is not even around her age. She wonders if Elric is that strong at such a young age, then he could be around the same level as Tasha and Neresta, one of the 3 new stars. Elric closes his eyes and sighs, recalling the memories of the child and Yetis and wishes for their souls to rest in peace. Mephisto calls Elric out, saying that Isabel and her members are staring at him so uneasily. Mephisto asks him why he does not say something to them because they are staring at him so much that even the back of his head hurts. He again calls Elric, but he doesn't listen. After that, Elric slowly turns around with a smile and looks at Isabel, saying that it has been a while. Chen thinks that even though Elric helped them, he is still a complete stranger and it is too early to let their guard down. He thinks that Elric is just as dangerous as the Blue Wolves if he has some ulterior motive. Isabel kneels before Elric and thanks him for saving them. Ed and Chen look down at Isabel in disbelief and ask how she could kneel. Elric immediately says that she has no need to go that far. Isabel also commands Chen and Ed to kneel before Elric. They obey Isabel and thank Elric for saving them. Mephisto remarks that it looks like Isabel knows what courtesy is. Unlike Chen and Ed, Elric says that he just did what anyone would have done and requests them to get up. Isabel gets up and asks Elric if she may ask him for a favor. Elric replies with a smile that he has to go somewhere else. She holds his hand in her palms and tells him that she would like to commission him. Elric looks at his hand then at Isabel. After that, their horse carriage moves through the dark place. Elric sits in front of Ed and Isabel. Mephisto tells Elric that he can see the corners of his lips rising. He annoyingly asks Elric to hide it properly. Elric wipes the sweat from his face and replies that is to be expected since he was given something so valuable. He looks at the gold coin on his palm. Elric recalls his earlier conversation with Isabel before sitting in this horse carriage. Isabel gives him the gold coin and he asks if it is the gold coin after seeing the sign of the blue lion on it. He asks Isabel if she is a lady of the whale family. Isabel replies that it is shameful to admit, but Elric realizes that it explains why she is so exceptionally beautiful. Scentless flower, Isabel wailed, though her beauty was enough for even the crown prince to be infatuated with her and asked for her hand in marriage, was abandoned because she was a flower with no scent just for the reason that she was not born with talent. Isabel believes that if the flesh and blood of the lion do not have sharp teeth and claws, then their worth falls just as much. Elric looks at Isabel and remembers that he heard she was living like a loner in her estate. After some time, the marriage was broken off. He smiles and introduces himself, saying that it is an honor to meet the only daughter of the Blue Lion. Isabel asks him why it would be an honor to meet someone like her. Elric replies with a smile that it is okay to have confidence. He tells her that from what he has seen, her tenacity is one that would not shame the name of the Blue Lion. Isabel thanks him for his motivating words. Elric reminds Isabel that she said something about a commission to him. Isabel replies him that she doesn't have anything, but at the moment she shamefully wants him to escort them to the imperial capital. Chen tries to interrupt, saying that they still haven't found that place. Isabel tells Chen that she doesn't want to lose even them because of her own greed. She states that she is going to meet with her uncle to negotiate with him first. Hearing Isabel talking about her uncle, Elric realizes that those knights from earlier look like they are part of the Whale family too. He wonders if there are some internal struggles within the Whale family because he heard that the Blue Lion was sick with something similar to the blockage disease. Elric's eyes widen when he realizes that he could use this to make the Blue Lion indebted to him. He begins to assume what will happen if the revived Mervinger joins hands with the Blue Lion. Elric imagines that it will be quite a spectacle. He giggles, thinking that being smart is the best. Elric coughs, and Isabel tells him that even though they are lacking to borrow his skills, she would like to give him about 2 times what she just gave him as a reward upon completion. Elric comes in response and looks at the gold coin on his palm. Isabel assumes that Elric cannot do it and extends her hand to take the gold coin from him. Elric immediately holds her hand and states that he will escort them safely. Now back in the horse carriage, Mephisto asks Elric why he needs money when there are tons of treasures in that Shineake's nest. Elric replies that he has a plan and asks Mephisto not to say something like that if he has never been cold and hungry before. Elric glares at Mephisto and asks what he is supposed to do when he does not have any money on him right now. He says to Mephisto that it might not matter to him since he is a trash ghost, but humans need money to eat and sleep. Mephisto sighs and comments that this is the problem with humans. Elric tells him that this sound conduction thing is pretty convenient, and he can send words to the target he wants with only a small amount of mana. Mephisto smirks and says to Elric that he only taught him because he was so annoyed with him keeping his mouth shut when anyone else was around. Elric chuckles and teases Mephisto by calling him a chatterbox, saying that no wonder he hated being muted so much. Mephisto glares at him and asks how he dares. Isabel looks at Elric and realizes that he is not saying a word. She wonders if it is because she commissioned him, but she knows that she needs his help. Because if her uncle, Paul Whale, sends even stronger blue wolves, there is no way that the 3 of them can block them. At Isabel's uncle, Paul Whale's palace, Paul Whale gets up from his throne and asks if Squad 6 has been annihilated. The member of the Blue Wolf bows in front of Paul Whale and apologizes with tears. Paul Whale says to him that if he is sorry, then he shouldn't have done something to be sorry for in the first place. Paul Whale finishes him with his sword and asks Hilton how he thinks Isabel will move. The Blue Wolf squad leader, Hilton, replies that since traces of Isabel leaving the Ice Mountain have been confirmed, she will most likely return to the Imperial capital. Paul Whale asks if Isabel is returning to the Imperial capital, then that means she will try to negotiate with him. Hilton replies that it is most likely to happen. Paul Whale puts his sword back into the scabbard and asks how such an incompetent girl like Isabel can try to negotiate with him. He tells Hilton that he only has one chance. The horse carriage reaches the Lacente, and Chen informs Isabel that they have arrived. Isabel smiles and says that they arrived in only 2 days from moving without rest, so she is so stiff. Mephisto's body aches all over, and Elric laughs and calls him a floating ghost. He asks Mephisto why he stayed upside down when he knows that the correct posture eases the mind. Elric looks out the horse carriage and sees the blue wolves. He looks into their memories and watches Hilton with other members. Hilton orders them to gather the Blue Wolf squad too. He tells them that they must mobilize their most powerful squad for something so trivial because Isabel returning to the capital is no different from a declaration of surrender. Hilton states that a hound should act like one. He says that Isabel will no doubt pass through Lacente if she is coming from the Ice Mountain to the Imperial capital. Hilton orders other members to turn that place into Isabel and her people's graves. Coming out from the memories, Elric widens his eyes. Isabel looks at the blue wolves and says that she expected that they wouldn't be able to move freely since the Lord rules over this place, but she never expected it to be this extent. Chen asks Isabel if they should turn back. Isabel denies, saying that they have already caught the blue wolves' attention and it will only make them more suspicious. She asks Chen to abandon the carriage, saying that they should get out from here in secret and find another place. Elric interrupts, saying that there is no need to do that. Isabel asks him what plan he has. Elric smirks and uses his display magic. The horse carriage begins to move, passing all the blue wolves without catching their eyes. They reach the place and come out from the horse carriage. Isabel asks Elric what magic he used. Elric chuckles and replies that it is just a simple illusion magic that makes their appearance look like something else for a moment. He adds that it is nothing more than a hypnosis that can break with even the slightest shock, so they have to be careful. Isabel thanks Elric, saying that they have entered the city safely because of him, and she is grateful from the bottom of her heart. Elric asks them to stay a night here and says that he will be right back on some business to take care of. Isabel asks him to come back safely. Elric and Mephisto begin to walk through the streets of the city. Mephisto asks Elric why he went out of his way to use illusion magic when he could have just wiped them all out. Elric replies that he didn't want to fight when he didn't even know the scale of their enemies. Elric adds that he also needs to conserve his mana for emergencies. Mephisto asks Elric what he thinks that soul speech and seals are for and if he is just lazy. He asks Elric if he should go to the academy or whatever soon, in any case. Elric replies that he should, but he needs to find something out first. Elric informs Mephisto that he needs to know what sort of situation their dean is in so that he can prepare how to ruin him over. Mephisto grins and exclaims that he does not know who Dean is, but he is such an unlucky man because he is being marked by Elric. Elric sighs and they continue to walk. Mephisto tells Elric that he felt something similar to mana from those nights. He asks Elric what that was. Elric says to Mephisto that he thinks that Aura Chain didn't exist in his time. Mephisto gets confused and Elric explains that mana is originally a blessing given to mags. But as time passed, even martial artists developed a method to apply mana to their bodies. Elric adds that if mags use magic by creating mana circles in their hearts, martial artists strengthen their bodies by weaving aura chains around their dantians. Elric tells Mephisto that just like how the ranks of mags are categorized as 6th Circle Magus, 7th Circle Archmage, and 8th Circle Sage, the ranks of martial artists are categorized as 1st Chain User, 2nd Chain Advanced, 3rd Chain Expert, 4th Chain Master, and 5th Chain Superior. Elric informs Mephisto that Isabel's knights are around user rank. Mephisto asks Elric if there are only 5. Elric replies that there are 5 usually, but there is an exception, and only one person has ever formed more than 5 chains. Mephisto wonders who that person is and Elric tells him that that person is the Golden Lion. He informs Mephisto that the Golden Lion is considered the strongest being on the continent. Mephisto remarks that it is an arrogant name and this is nothing more than human standards. Elric tells him that the Golden Lion was a match against his grandfather, who was one of the greatest in the history of Mervinga. Mephisto smiles and says to Elric that he would love to meet the Golden Lion one day. When they finally reach the place, Elric realizes that Mephisto is stuck on something again. He decides to focus on important things and purchases a month's worth of newspapers to find out what happened in the time that he was absent. On the other hand, Vera asks Liburn if it still has not been taken care of yet. Carl kneels before him and apologizes, saying that the Nerestas are guarding the hospital like an impenetrable fortress, which makes Vera curse Sean. Then he informs him that since his accomplishment of discovering the nest is being raised by the academic circles and the press, he is much superior to the other candidates for the headmaster election approval ratings. Then Varric says that they never know what will happen if he cannot obtain the excavation rights for the nest. He declares that he wants an overwhelming victory. Liburn asks Varric to just give him his command. Dean commands him to pressure the Nerestas even more. Then Liburn goes to Sean and informs him that the pressure being placed on the transfer of the nest excavation rights by the academic circles and the press is serious. He tells Sean that since this situation is no different from him stabbing his supervising professor in the back, the academic circles are in an uproar. Hearing this, Sean chuckles sadly. He sobs to Carl that his sister comes to grill him every single day and Elric has not contacted him even once. Sean looks at the papers on the desk and declares that he has already resolved himself and he will keep injuring until Elric returns. Elric reads everything in the newspaper and remarks that the dean is sly as always. He says that Sean is going through hell because of him. Elric says for Dean that he is using the press. The older you get, the more sly you get. Quite well. Mephisto continues to stare at Elric, and Elric slams his fist on the newspaper, asking Dean to just climb like that because it will only make his debut stage more fabulous. Elric sighs and expresses that he feels so bad for Sean. He asks if there is anything he can do for him. Suddenly, Elric and Mephisto hear the chaos coming from outside. They look out the window and witness the fire blowing outside. Elric grits his teeth and opens the gate. He witnesses the burning fire everywhere. Chen asks Isabel if she trusts Elric. Isabel replies that he saved them. Chen expresses his concern, saying that Elric may not be Paul Whale's subordinate, but he could be an assassin sent by the other 7 lions aiming for the main estate. Chen adds that he cannot be sure, but they must prepare for the possibility. Isabel understands where Chen is coming from, but she realizes that he has become too overprotective since the time they were attacked in the Ice Mountain. Isabel says to Chen that she understands what he is trying to say, but she asks him to keep this in mind, that doubt toward Elric is also doubt toward her decision. Ed and Chen look at Isabel in disbelief. She recalls the face of Elric and realizes that she trusts him, thinking the face that Elric made that day is something that only someone who is righteous can make. Chen says that he understands, but Elric is a mercenary who just wants money. Isabel denies, saying that Elric probably did that on purpose. Ed and Chen look at her in confusion, and she explains that Elric helped them without any compensation from the beginning. Isabel says that Elric would have helped them even if they didn't commission him, but his face changed as soon as he found out they were from the whale family. Isabel tells them that Elric took into account that their family's reputation may be tarnished and lowered himself on purpose. Ed exclaims, saying that he understands that Elric did such a thing to not make the Blue Lion look weak. Isabel smiles and begins to say something to Chen, but suddenly the place explodes due to the fire attack. Looking at the burning area, Blue Wolf Squad 3 leader Simonon asks Blue Wolf Squad 2 leader Beskov if it isn't burning quite nicely. He asked Beskov if it is really worth the price of a scroll containing the fourth circle advent of heat wave. Beskov asked Simonon how he can laugh at this. Simonon looks at Beskov and says that he was agreeing with his opinion just a while ago, and now he is acting seriously. He asked Beskov if he knows how much he had to spend on this thing. Beskov curses at Simonon and says that he cannot think of anything better other than considering Isabel's personality. He says that she will show herself to help people no matter what. Simonon asks him if they should burn some more. Beskin tells Simonon that Squad 6 has been wiped out, and according to Hilton, there are at least 3 or more enemies unaccounted for. He informs Simonon that Hilton said to be careful since mags might be among them. Simonon claims that he could wipe out those Squad 6 small fries with his eyes closed. Simonon says to Beskov that he and Hilton worry too much. He smirks, saying that since he has come all the way here, it would be great if they were strong enough to entertain him. Beskov agrees and asks him to begin. He orders his squad to find Isabel and to eliminate everyone except her. Isabel continues to crawl to protect herself from fire. She hears someone asking her to hide. Isabel looks for Ed and Chen and asks if they are all right. She witnesses the people crying and mourning over their loss. Chen begs her to run away. Isabel clenches her teeth and picks up her sword. She feels that she is filled with rage at her powerlessness because she wants to face them head-on and save the people. But Isabel knows that she has neither the power nor the talent to stop them. Isabel gets up, telling herself that she doesn't want to run and to live such a shameful life. She recalls Elric's motivating words which he said to her and realizes that she wants to become like him. Isabel begins to come out thinking that she is a member of the Whale family, the protector of the Empire. She decides that even if she may die, she will fight until the end. Suddenly, Isabel sees the fire begin to extinguish. She wonders what happened, but then she notices Elric and realizes that he did it. Isabel sees Elric freezing the place with his mana, and everyone begins to murmur that they are saved. Seeing Elric, Isabel thinks that she doesn't know how long it will take or it may be impossible, but she wonders if she can stand alongside Elric someday. Elric asks Mephisto why the knights are killing innocent civilians. Mephisto replies that the rage of the Mervingus is usually dormant, but it is not extinguished easily once it bursts. Mephisto explains that it is something that he knows very well as one who has confronted them in the past. He says that contrary to regular humans who make mistakes when they lose their reason, they become calmer, more merciless, and much stronger. Elric stands on the tower and looks down at blue wolves. Mephisto smirks, saying that there seems to be more of them, and they are much stronger than the ones he faced last time. He questions Elric if he thinks he can win now. Elric replies that it will be difficult because he is not sure how long his mana will last, and he cannot freely use magic among all these civilians either. Mephisto asks Elric why he is not running then. Elric tells him that there is a saying in their family that those with power have the obligation to prove themselves worthy of it. Elric uses his power and states that this is why the Mervingus have always been the spearhead of every war. The Blue Wolves recognize the man's four-ring magic and know better than to oppose him. They wonder if he came from Tyrium, and if so, they can't mess with Tyrium. Their heart fills with fear. Beskov knows every wizard from the Tyrium, and he does not recognize the man to be one of them. They decide to be cautious and plan to leave as soon as they get Isabel. And if the wizard gets in the way, they are ordered to kill him. However, the Blue Wolves cannot move. Isabella recognizes Sir Rick, who's come to her aid. Sir Rick disappears, only leaving a trail of flash throughout the city. He sees 40 people and decides to take it someplace without civilians. The leader of the Blue Wolves blows a whistle. The soldiers gather around, but Sir Rick runs past them in a flash, leaving them flying. He stops surrounded by the Blue Wolves. They inquire about Isabella, but, of course, he refuses to tell them. The blue wolves run to attack Rick. Although Rick's powerful, he needs to be cautious. He already used most of his mana to put out the fire in the city. And even though the mana in his dragon heart increased greatly after he devoured the seal, if he crosses the limit again, it'll take a toll on his body like it did last time. A flashback of his previous deaths runs through Rick's mind. He's reminded that back then, he could just quit and try again, but now he needs to be cautious because he only gets one chance. Rick sees the number of 30 to 40 people. He now knows that Isabella was right. They give it their all even if they are against one person. Rick draws out his weapon and decides to attack the leader first. He runs to attack them, but to his surprise, he can't move like he did before. Mephi calls out his bluff for defeating the Mountain King, but he swears that he fought her and could move as fast as he wanted. The blue wolf knocks Rick to the ground and stabs the sword into the ground, nearly missing Rick's head. Mephi reminds him that reality isn't as easy as his grandfather's game. Suddenly, another blue wolf runs to attack Rick with enthusiasm. He thinks Rick is a fool to engage in close-range combat and dares him to use his magic. He uses his penetration ability and slashes his opponent, but is surprised when the attack barely even scratches him. They both exchange blows attacking each other, but then a loud boom goes out. A mist surrounds them, making it difficult to see. The mist clears out, and the blue wolves think they have Rick cornered like a rat, but then a flare lights up the sky. He only wanted to gather every one of them. A magic spell activates surrounding them. They underestimate Rick's magic ability, thinking it won't work on them, but then someone notices something. They notice Rick's eyes, something inhumane about them, and decide to act now and kill Rick before he activates the spell. However, they can only wish. When Rick was taking Isabella to safety, he inquired about the blue wolves' fighting style. She told him they fight in herds like the wolves and gang up on their opponent until they are dead. It was with this information that Rick strategized to gather them and take them out once and for all. The trap was Isabella's suggestion. Rick asks her for a favor. He tells her to guide the citizens out of the square and rip the signal magic scroll because that's the only way he can rise and wipe everyone out. Meanwhile, Rick uses his mana trap and freezes everyone. He approaches one of their soldiers and calls them dim-witted puppets for not seeing the mana. As he reaches to give the last man a miserable death, someone interrupts at the last minute and attacks Rick. The blue wolves had a second formation keeping an eye on Rick. The way Rick lured all of them to kill everyone all at once impressed the blue wolves too. They admire his confidence and the strategic plan, but then they notice the mischievous grin on Rick's face, which makes them wonder if he knew they were spying on him. However, they don't believe it's possible, and if he had known, they think Rick wouldn't have chosen to use a mana trap. The blue wolves tell Rick to hand over Isabel in exchange for his life, but Rick doesn't plan to let them live. He threatens to show them no mercy because they have abandoned their chivalry. The blue wolf tells his squad to protect themselves with aura and keep the formation. He runs to attack Rick, but Rick dodges the swing. Rick counters with the Curse of the Rust spell, but it doesn't work. He then tries another attack but fails once again. Rick's Echoing Gust spell is also a lot weaker. He wonders if it's because of the Mountain King's seal because all the spells other than the ice ones have gotten weaker. He wonders if he needs to acquire more seals to be able to cast powerful spells of another nature. However, even using one seal is not easy. The Mountain King seal is difficult to use. In the mountains, Rick could draw his energy from the ice, but in a city, his ice skills won't be as effective or even mana efficient. But Rick has other ways to get out. He summons the blizzard. The blue wolves struggle to even stand their ground. The blizzard keeps getting stronger. At last, their leader decides to end it now. He tells everyone to attack, but to his surprise, everyone turns into ice. Rick's ice poison freezes anything that comes into its contact, and the blue wolves made a mistake trying to block it instead of getting out. The blue wolves had never seen such a magic spell. Rick tells them it's just his ice magic combined with a curse. The blue wolves now realize that the leader of Squad 1 made a mistake sending them like that. The blue wolf threatens Rick for crossing them and says the leader will have his head. But before the blue wolf could say anything more, Rick kills him, splattering his blood all over. He tells him he won't be alone in the afterlife because the leader will be the next one. Meanwhile, right outside the town square, some of the blue wolves manage to escape, thanks to Beskov, and they have the scroll that contains the 6-ring spell Wheel of Fire. They feel ashamed running away from the fight like cowards, but their leader tells them to keep running. He tells them to burn the city down and to burn everything and even kill Isabel if they have to, but their only task is to turn the city into ashes. Mephi smelled the mischievous plans of the blue wolves, and he alerted Rick about it. Suddenly, a huge blast goes off in the city. Mephi thinks humans are crazy and hypocrites. They are more evil than the demons because they pretend to be noble while ravaging through the cities. Rick quickly runs to find the blue wolves left. There are 3 left, and he can't even find one. The use of the 6-ring spell magic scroll, which has the power to burn down the city, makes the situation even more dire. Rick runs through the streets to look for the blue wolves. One of them stands on a rooftop with the magic scroll in his hand and sees Rick running. But suddenly, out of nowhere, one of his arms was chopped off. As it turns out, the invisibility cloak that Rick gave Isabel kept her hidden all along. The blue wolf draws a dagger in his other hand and prepares to attack Isabel, but Rick turns him into ice. Done with the games, Rick extends his hand to finish the blue wolf, but then the blue wolf reminds him that it doesn't end with him. There are still 2 of them left. The other blue wolves spread chaos throughout the city. He tells Rick that they will have finished with the preparations while he was busy dealing with him. He boasts about their commitment to the cause and tells Rick that he is lost and the city will scream in agony. However, he underestimates Rick. When Rick used his magic earlier running through the city, he had already spotted the other 2 blue wolves and impaled them with ice. Upon realizing that he's been defeated, the blue wolves leader begs Isabel for his life. He desperately persuades her and tells her he will talk to Paul Whale. However, Isabel is done with people dragging her family's name through mud. She swings her weapon and finishes off the blue wolves leader. Rick notices Isabel trembling and tells her to take a moment. Isabel asks Rick to capture one of the blue wolves for her. She tells him how the knights of her own family never respected her for not having any talent, and those who did so only did it out of an obligation that she was the Blue Lion's daughter. The blue wolves who worked for her uncle Paul Whale never respected her and always gave her a terrifying glance, and the hatred for her shone visibly in their eyes. But not anymore. Now they are the ones who are scared of her. With the help of Rick, she captures one of the blue wolves and tells him to tell Paul that he will never be the Blue Lion. The blue wolf runs in fear to deliver the message to Paul Whale. Isabel knows that it's not her that they are scared of. In reality, they are scared of Rick. She feels sorry for her luck and regrets not having any powers, but she also understands that she needs to pull herself together. And if she wants to be stronger, she will have to change her passive attitude first. Isabel's next course of action is to go to Kanhoi, where her father is staying. She plans to ask some of the relatives who owe her father for help. Rick thinks it's a good idea to gather forces because no one will dare to trespass a place where the Blue Lion himself is staying. However, Isabel worries that she'll lose the fight if her father's condition doesn't get any better. If Rick helped her, she might have a shot at winning, but lions cannot join hands with the wizards. He has helped Isabel a lot and she doesn't want to leave him now, but she has no choice but to say goodbye now. While Isabel keeps thinking about that, he hands her over a dissertation. Isabel's father has a disease similar to monovascularity, and the dissertation is the cure for monovascularity, which Rick believes could help the Blue Lion. Isabel stands surprised when he hands her over the dissertation for the cure for monovascularity. She doesn't understand what it means until she finds out the truth. Rick apologizes for hiding his identity, but Isabel is still clueless about the situation. He reveals that his name is Elric Mervinger and is the master of House Mervinger. He's also called the Duke of the Shining Star. The title was awarded to him by the Emperor himself after Usden Mervinger, the Wizard of the Stars, won against the demons. The title has the status of royalty. It is equivalent to that of a duke's. The title doesn't offer much governing power, but it was granted by the Emperor himself, so it is an honor in itself. The reaction on Isabel's face turns from confused to shocked. He was supposed to be unconscious at the hospital, and he was incapable of the abilities that Rick possesses. However, Elric tells her he had his reasons to hide his identity. He suffered from monovascularity, and the dissertation that he gave to Isabel is the cure he recorded after experimenting on himself. From what Elric has heard, the lion's condition is similar to his, so he thinks it could help the lion too. He tells Isabel that the Blue Lion would love to see her get back at the people who hurt her. Tears fill Isabel's eyes and she wonders how she can ever pay him back for everything he has done for her. Elric tells her to not worry because he will get something in exchange. Tears run down Isabel's cheeks and she offers to pay him back by making him a hero. While they try to rebuild the city, Mephi shows his concern for him revealing his identity. However, Elric thinks that Paul Whale will try to find him anyway after he killed his blue wolves. Besides, he has a unique magic signature, so finding him wouldn't be difficult. And since he is doing the Blue Lion a favor, it could help him when he puts his family back on the map. Mephi is impressed by Elric's political ability to gain a good reputation and a spotlight in a fancy family. The civilians show their gratitude towards Elric for helping them. If he hadn't defeated the blue wolves, who knows what they would have done. A lady asks him to stay, but he respectfully declines. Chen, the Whale family's knight, also shows his gratitude to Elric and thanks him for his help. He asks Chen what he's going to do next. Chen tells him that even though it was Paul Whale who committed this act, it was a crime of the whale nonetheless. And as a knight of the family, he vows to stay and help whoever needs it. After that, he will head to Kanhoi and join Lady Isabel. Mephi is impressed with how they are able to manipulate people with sincerity to make Paul Whale look bad. Elric tells him that the nobles are trying to pursue justice, not manipulation with sincerity. As he leaves, the civilians say their goodbyes and thank Elric for his help. Maffei thinks that it is justification they seek, not justice. Next, he decides to pay the Dean a visit. Meanwhile, Dean Verick is furious at Lyburn for not bringing him the right to excavation. He screams at him that he hired him to get rid of the obstacles, and right now, Sean Naister is that obstacle. Dean threatens Liebern's career in the academic field if he doesn't get his job done. He doesn't care if he has to persuade the media or bribe the higher-ups as long as it gets the job done. Dean Verick is frustrated. With only 3 days left in the election, if he doesn't get those rights, he's doomed to fail. As Lyburn leaves, the room fills with a purple flame, and Lazuli enters the room. He asks Dean Verick if he wishes to join him now. Dean Verick asks Lazuli how he's going to get him the rights to excavation and make him the minister. Lazuli tells him that everything has been arranged, and they are only waiting for the Dean to join hands with him. Dean Verick asks how they were able to do what he failed to, but Lazuli tells him if he doesn't trust them, then it's better to call the deal off. He says he trusts them and asks what they want in return. Lazuli answers that they want his support for the siesta, which Dean Verick thinks is too simple. He reconfirms if that is really all they want, but Lazuli tells him with a mischievous grin that that's all they want. Meanwhile, out in the city, the people gossip about the events of the Lakent city and the level of destruction that took place. They sing feats about some wizard who wiped out the attackers and how they call him a hero of Lee Sent. It was Isabel who spread the rumors about Elric's heroic feats to gain him a favorable public opinion. When she offered to make him a hero, she suggested spreading the heroic tales about Elric so that when he's ready to show himself to the world, he will have the public's favor. And on the other side, it will help Isabel pressurize Paul Whale and build her own reputation. The people gossip about Isabel and the Crown Prince's romance and the Lee Sent hero, which makes Elric think they are more interested in romances than heroic feats. Either way, he knows Isabel is really good at turning a situation to her advantage. Heroic tales or romance is an effective way to get the name out in public. Elric hopes that he has someone like Isabel to help him when he tries to rebuild his family name. Elric tells Mephi to get off the table and decides to head somewhere else to eat. But as he leaves, someone interrupts him. A huge bang goes out, and the smoke covers the scene, making it impossible to see what exactly is happening. The brawl grabs people's attention. They wonder if it's Paul Whale, which it couldn't be because they are in the capital. Meanwhile, Elric and the attacker exchange a few blows. He recognizes the magic and dodges the attack. He tells the man that there is no way to greet a friend. The man tells him he should have expected this when he showed up and calls him a traitor. The attacker is Sean Naresta, the third son of the Naresta family and the executioner of Elric the traitor. The spectators are surprised when Elric calls Sean his best friend. What they thought was a brawl was just friendly banter. Meanwhile, Sean brings out how he has to clean up after the mad dog Mervinger every single time and says personality was never his strong suit. Sean orders iced tea, a Renovan beer, and some food while they discuss their plan and catch up. Meanwhile, Elric thinks that Sean must have felt the change in his magic, but he still didn't mention it, so is probably waiting for Elric to bring it up. Him and Sean exchange a little playful banter about Elric's looks. Sean tells him that he's preparing for the show that he mentioned in the letters, but is concerned that Elric might lose everything. However, Elric only cares about two things right now, bringing down Virus, who attempted to kill him, and restoring his family's honor. Assured by Elric, Sean agrees to do what Elric asked him. Sean begins to tell Elric about Carl's busy life, but is quickly overrun by panic and anxiety. He realizes that Tasha, the Naresta family witch, must have heard the news by now. He's worried that she'll go mad if she finds out and might mess up their plan. Meanwhile, Tasha is furious about the rights to excavation being handed over to the Academy. She decides to rush to the hospital at once and asks Hanabi to brief her because until yesterday, the newspapers were trashing Dean Veru. Hanabi reads newspaper headlines about the Naresta family forfeiting excavation rights and Dean Veru gaining them. However, Tasha doesn't believe that her father would have let the Hexical order him around. She inquires about Sean, but Hanabi tells her that Sean hasn't responded either. Tasha gets upset that Sean isn't responding after getting them to stand up for Elric. She decides to change the destination and surprise everyone because the excavation right doesn't belong to the Naresta family or the Academy. She finally sees through the play and decides to pay Sean and Elric a visit worth remembering. Meanwhile, Elric sneaks into the palace where the election committee is being held. The position of the Minister of Uston Academy is no more significant than the head of a magic academy, but its influence is more powerful and symbolic than one can imagine. The title is considered as noble as a marquess, alongside the Tower Masters of the Hexical and the captain of the Imperial Wizard Knights who possess great influence over academia and politics. Having that position means you carry the honor of Uston Mervinger, the Wizard of the Stars, and the election is today. So Elric has to take care of things before it's too late. Meanwhile, Dean Veru addresses the committee and boasts his part in discovering the Diamond Dragon's Nest, a historical feat. He sings of his feats and promises to make more discoveries like that to gain a vote from the committee. Sean, who observes the speech from the committee, is annoyed by the speech. Moreover, he's worried if Elric can really pull it off alone because Verua's approval rating is really high. When they were planning out today's events during lunch yesterday, Sean told Elric that the supporters were bribed, so his plan might not work. But he assured him that what he plans for today will work. Meanwhile, Lazuli compliments Verua's speech, but Veru doesn't wish to jinx it yet because he hasn't been elected yet. He tells Lazuli that he will hold up his end of the bargain. In reality, Verix has no plan to help the siesta. After being elected, Veru will be with the Tower Masters of the Hexical, and it'll be easier for him to take care of the siesta once he is the minister. Meanwhile, after all 7 candidates finish their speeches, the voting is soon about to begin. Sean is at the edge waiting for Elric, who's nowhere to be found. But then his eye catches Tasha, who just entered the room. The committee member tells Tasha that she's mistaken because this is an election committee seating area. But Tasha tells him that she's here on behalf of the master of the Neresta household, and she understands the situation better than anyone. Her glance towards Sean makes him think that she knows something. Meanwhile, before the voting begins, Liburn announces the details regarding the process. He tells the committee that the manospheres everyone received contain information about the candidates. They can use that information to vote, and the results will be announced once everyone has voted. Verix is eager. He has waited for this day forever. His election pledge will interest the Tyrion and the Imperial family alongside those directly related to the Academy. More than that, he already has made some deals with the representatives, and he is only waiting for the announcement now. Lubin begins to announce the results. Everyone except the Mervingus voted. He starts to announce the name, and Verix's eagerness keeps growing, but then someone halts the decision. The committee members feel offended upon the intruder's arrival except for Sean and Tasha, who had been waiting for this moment. The intruder announces himself as Elric Mervinger, master of the House of Mervinger, the Duke of the Shining Star. Verix's face turns pale when Elric announces his participation in the election. The committee members scream in chaos and gossip. Verix is shocked to see Elric. The representatives are offended that a student is here to ruin the ministerial election. However, Elric tells them he's not here as a student, but as a Duke of the Empire and a representative of the election, pointing towards the empty seat reserved for the Mervinger family. Meanwhile, Verix continues to act foolish and asks Elric why he's here after the voting has already ended. He starts to announce the results, but then Elric interrupts with the Uzdan Academy election law. He recites Section 7, Article 2 of the law that says a re-election may take place with the consent of more than half of the representatives if a candidate is found to have issues that could disqualify them. Elric proceeds to declare Veru's disqualification on the account of several crimes, including forgery of private documents and the attempted murder of Elric, the Duke of the Shining Star. Verix continues to act innocent and tells Elric to prove the basis of his accusations. He takes the high ground and agrees to follow the law, thinking that Elric is only bluffing and cannot prove himself. Verix tells the representatives to not believe Elric's baseless accusations. He feels that Elric must have some tricks, but still feels confident that he won't change the results of the election. Verix proceeds to deny Elric's claims after a moment of silence from the representatives, but Elric interrupts, saying that he has more to say. Elric's confidence in his claims now starts to worry Veru. He realizes that they've found the dragon's den. Elric shows the representative a crystal in which Veru is seen and heard, telling someone to take him out as they planned and collect the Grand Collar of Wizardry as evidence afterward. Elric reveals that Veru didn't offer any support to the discovery that he and Sean made. Instead, he tried to kill Elric and steal his family heirloom. With the evidence, Elric proves his claims. However, Varric still denies his crimes and calls the evidence a trick made with illusionary magic. Elric points out that he can't make sophisticated magic that could fool a 7-ring great high wizard like Varu, and it would make him an 8-ring wizard if he could. The representatives agree with Elric that he can't fool them all with illusion magic, let alone a 7-ring wizard. Besides, he suffers from manner of vascularity. Verix wonders how Elric got the crystal that he gave to Liburn to take care of Elric at the den. Leban announces the hindrance that the election faces, which strikes Veru with a realization. He realizes now that Liburn betrayed him. When Sean and Elric reunited and discussed their plans over lunch, Sean told him that he caught Liburn roaming around the hospital. Liburn told him that he was waiting for Elric because he had something to give to him. Liburn decided to take revenge when Verix screamed at him and called him a worthless nothing. It's good for Elric that Liburn kept the evidence. And although the evidence he had was enough to bring Verric down, Elric wants to spice things up a little. However, he wonders why Liburn had the conversation recorded, maybe as a contingency. Either way, it benefited Elric well. Elric addresses the representatives that, as per law, the ownership of a dungeon, including dragon nests, belongs to its first finder. However, Veru took over the excavation rights for the Diamond Dragon's nest without permission, which means Veruix not only attempted to murder the Duke of the Shining Star, but also attempted to steal the moving heirloom. Elric urges the representatives to hold Veru accountable for stealing the excavation rights to his dungeons too. He announces that he wants to disqualify Veru as an election candidate as well as make him pay for the crimes. The representatives start to lose support for Veru. After all, he's of no use to them without the excavation rights. However, some of them have questions regarding Elric's health. For starters, he has traces of mana in him despite suffering from mana avascularity. And secondly, he was supposed to be in a coma. They demand answers from the Neresta family. Tasha tells them she is clueless and it was Sean who was involved with Elric. Varric still continues to refute the evidence, calling it fake. However, he realizes his whole career is at risk at this point and his only course of action is to play the innocent angle and seek help from the siesta. As Veru runs to get help from the siesta, he sees him standing with Sean. Lazuli changes his appearance, revealing the truth. Lazuli was Sean's servant and played Veru all along. Carl, Sean's servant, has been playing with Veru for a while, which he enjoyed. Anger fills Varric when he realizes he got fooled, that he has been getting fooled all along. After revealing all the evidence and changing the representatives' minds, Elric commences the revoting and auctions the seat. While the new minister of the Uzdown Academy gives a speech, Miffy says Elric is either fearless or senseless for bargaining like that. Elric has no problem with taking advantage of things. Besides, he needs to take care of the academic warning and apply for a scholarship. Varric takes offense when he telepathically hears Elric call him bald. Elric continues to make fun of Varric's bald head until he bursts out in fury. At last, Varric's anger gets the better of him and the whole seating room lights up in magic. The representatives run for their lives. Veru threatens to kill Elric and attacks him with magic. Meanwhile, Elric casts his spell. The representatives recognize the White Blizzard, a 5-ring spell. Varric continues to attack, but Elric's spell blocks it out. One of them recognizes the spell from the one the Lacent hero used, and as they take a look at the user, they see that it's Elric. The revelation comes as a surprise to everyone because they thought he couldn't practice magic. Elric underestimates Veru's abilities because of his age. He forgets that there's a reason Veru is a 7-ring high wizard. However, Varric too forgets his place. Someone flicks their finger and a fiery blaze erupts. As Elric takes a glance at the magic user, he recognizes the Phoenix Witch. She's the youngest 7-ring high wizard who tamed a phoenix all on her own, but Elric didn't expect her to join. The representatives warn Veru that if he continues to do this, he will be punished for terrorism. Elric realizes that the representatives, including the Masters of Hexacol, are as powerful as Veru, and if he continues to spread chaos, they will take him down by force. Elric decides to take advantage of this situation and tries to provoke Veru even more. He belittles Veru and tells him he was only empty threats. The anger gets the better of Veru once again and he attacks Elric, throwing him across the room. The representatives stand surprised and run to hold Veru down. Mephi is impressed by Elric's mischievous play. He thinks if Elric were a demon, he would have made a great Dark Lord. However, Elric made Veru pay for what he did to him. Veruix was finally taken down and restrained by force. Meanwhile, in the capital, the people gossip about the events of the election and how Elric saved the day. Sean reads the newspaper about the events. Dean Varric is banned from the academy and academia after his arrest for attempted murder, Elric saving the empire and defeating the demons, and the big question of how Elric cured his mana of vascularity, a disease previously known as incurable. The rise of the Mervinger house and the redemption of Elric all annoy Sean that he has to read them to Elric. But Elric tells him is a patient, so he has to read it to him. The reporters stand eager outside the Neresta palace to interview the hero Elric Mervinger. Sean asks the mad dog Mervinger why he has made himself into a hero after cheating his way out. Elric proceeds to tell him about meeting the daughter of the Blue Lion at Lacent, but then stops halfway, saying he doesn't need to know. Sean tells him to be patient for now and hold back his plans and tells him that his father invites him for dinner. Sean's father, Guy Neresta, is a 9-ring high sage, one of the top 10 wizards of their time. He's the master of the Neresta family, the family that leads the Turium. Even Elric's grandfather wanted to take him in as his apprentice. To sum up, Guy Neresta is the genius of geniuses. Meanwhile, seeing Sean's elegant and huge palace leaves Elric's jaw dropped in surprise. The huge palace spread out onto the hills. If Elric knew that Sean was so well off, he would have tried to get more. Elric enters the house of the most powerful family of the Turium and hopes to surpass them one day. As they walk towards the palace, Sean tells Elric that his sister is coming too, and he couldn't tell him earlier. Elric reads the letter from his sister. She tells him to behave until she gets there. And if she doesn't find him there, she will kill him. His sister's message makes Elric tremble in fear, which makes Mephi wonder who she is that could make someone like Elric scared. Sean thinks that Elric's sister is nice, but Elric tells him that he hasn't seen her other side yet. Sean gets smacked for calling Tasha an old hag phoenix witch and a cow genius. Elric thanks Tasha for her help, but she tells him he didn't need it in the first place. However, Sean wonders why she helped Elric because she never does something nice for anyone, but Tasha refuses to answer the question. As they reach the Hall of Mist, Tasha tells Elric they have to get past this to get to her father's mansion. However, the place is filled with traps that are difficult even for six-ring wizards, so he needs to be careful. Suddenly, Elric disappears and finds himself alone, surrounded by nothing but endless space and mist. Suddenly, he sees a halo ahead of him, and the space fills with magic energy. Elric wonders if this is the true power of the Nerestas. The space is filled with elements, some being potent, some mild, some sharp, and some so blunt that they hurt. At first, one would think they are all different branches of magic, but at the same time, they are bound by a single matter, wind. Elric doesn't know what place this is, but he believes he can harness the power if he does some research. While he continues to contemplate, a voice calls him out. The voice asks him if he even knows what is seeing or is just looking clueless. Elric didn't come to this place on purpose, but watching another wizard working on their magic is still a crime. If the wizard controls the place, then he must be at least a 7-ring wizard, which means Elric is in way over his head. Elric blames the Nerestas for not guiding him properly and decides it's better to pretend to not hear the man. However, the man can hear Elric plotting in his mind. Elric cloaks himself and hides himself from the man. The clever trick impresses the man, and his interest in Elric only grows more. Although Elric couldn't finish analyzing the magic, it is better than being caught. As Elric continues to find a way out, the space starts to rumble, and he finds the man standing before him. The man tells Elric that he took something that wasn't his, and now he needs to pay for it. Meanwhile, Sean and Tasha think about what to do next. Guy Neresta finds the Hall of Mist open and asks them what happened. Tasha tells him Elric disappeared before they could go through the entrance. As they look up, they see magic engraved. Guy Neresta realizes that it's his great-uncle's doing. However, what he's thinking is beyond anyone's understanding. Sean insists on helping Elric because he was their guest. Seeing Sean care about Elric makes Tasha even more curious about him. Guy Neresta's intrigued about Elric too. His family was an elite wizard family as powerful as the Chirium, which only makes him wonder what Elric is capable of. The Hall of Mist was the old man's lifelong research, and it took Elric only a moment to understand it and use it against the old man, which only impresses him more. So he decides to test him for everything he's got. Maffei, Otto Hahn, and now this old man are all after Elric for some reason. He struggles to defend himself against the old man's attacks. Elric uses his mind and decides it's better to calm down and understand this situation first. This place has more than one attribute of magic, and the Nerestas are known for their mastery of wind, which only means that the magic in this place has different attributes of wind. All it takes is the understanding of wind to master this place. Fire mixed with wind turns water into vapor, which is collected and turned into mist by the light breeze. The icy wind combined with mist thickens it, and the rapid gusts that flow through it entrap everything that steps in it. The old man's accuracy in controlling the wind means that he can raise a storm if he wants to. Elric didn't start the fight, but is now committed to finishing his analysis. He felt his other types of magic being weak in Lee sent before. However, studying the way mana flow in this place changes the winds, and applying it to his mana and ice magic will allow Elric to rearrange the mana flow from his incantations to his seal and increase his mana efficiency. This way, he can learn to control other attributes with his ice magic too. Elric finally understands how the magic works in this place. He starts to absorb the energy. His seal incantations start to glow and his energy transcends, finally elevating his magic levels. The old man sighs in relief as if he found what he was looking for. Finally, Elric goes back to Sean and Tasha. They are surprised how it took Elric 46 minutes to get out when it takes a 6-ring wizard at least 24 hours, and Tasha took 4 hours and 52 minutes. Mephi realizes something more. He recognizes that Elric's mastery of the Mountain King seal rose to 5 stars. Mephi was impressed with the magic circle, and Elric managed to not only break it, but take it for himself too. Guy Neresta recognizes that Elric has upgraded to a 6-ring wizard a few days after curing his mana of vascularity, breaking Tasha's record for being the youngest 6-ring wizard ever. Elric formally meets Guy Neresta, the master of the Neresta family. Guy Neresta apologizes to Elric for troubling him and welcomes him inside the house. A silence overruns Elric for a moment, but then he follows them inside. Meanwhile, Isabel finds her father awake on the bed and runs to hug him in excitement. Her father asks her how she managed to treat him when even the doctors deemed him incurable. Isabel bursts out in tears and tells him Elric helped her. The Blue Lion doesn't doubt Elric's help for a second. Their family has always helped others in need. Seeing him prepare to leave, Isabel tells her father to rest, but he tells her that right now his priority is to find Elric even if he has to go to the other end. In a world full of chaos, he needs righteous men like Elric. Hilton informs Paul Whale of the Blue Wolf's defeat and their failure to capture Isabel. The Blue Lion's cure and the death of the last surviving Blue Wolf were all Elric's doing. Hilton informs Paul Whale that the Blue Lion is heading to the Neresta residence to contact Elric Merginger. Paul Whale thinks the Blue Lion has gotten weak for not confronting his brother first and tells Hilton to stop him from meeting Elric. He tells Hilton to get rid of the Blue Lion the moment he leaves for the Neresta residence and reminds him that he's only alive because of his abilities. As Sean and Elric head inside the mansion, Mephi raises a serious concern. He wonders if Guy Neresta is even human. Mephi is concerned because if Guy is an ordinary human being and not even a Mervinger, it should be impossible for him to gain that amount of power without meddling with some other race. However, Elric tells him that humans have been evolving for the 1,000 years that Mephi lost being locked up. He tells Mephi about all the other powerful humans, like the other masters of the Tyrion, the lions of the Domus Leonis, the Oculus of the Imperial family, the soldiers of Libertas, and the Therianthropes. Mephi feels delighted to have woken up at this time. Other than the Gold Lion, the most powerful being on the continent, there are other people as powerful as Guy or even more than him. The world is full of people tearing each other apart to take over the world. Mephi looks forward to stumping them all under his feet and rising to victory as the Dark Prince Mephistopheles. He says he will have to train Elric harder to recover his powers, but Elric pays no attention and leaves. Meanwhile, as they all have lunch together, Lil and Tom start to fight each other like kids do. Their mother tells them to be quiet at the dinner table. The childish banter between the siblings and their mother telling them to stop fighting brings back memories of his past to Elric. Remembers how he shared a table with his parents and how they raised him. While reminiscing about his childhood, Elric barely ate his food, which made Sean's mother think that he didn't like the taste. However, Elric assures her that the food tasted good and he was just savoring every bite of it. He tells her that he feels nice having a meal with other people, which reassures the mother. After lunch, they have tea together. Guy brings up the fact that Elric is handing over the excavation rights to the Neresta family. As they drink tea together, Guy asks Elric if he hates him. The Mervinger family was a 1,000-year-old family that emerged victorious through many wars. A family like that doesn't just fall apart in a few days. It was abandoned by the imperial family, set up by the Hexical, and betrayed by those they once trusted. It was politics that brought the demise of the family. Elric tells Guy that he doesn't hate him because he believes there's more than just one side to a story. From what Elric knows, Nerestas didn't participate in Mervinger's family's demise. They just couldn't assist due to political reasons. Elric doesn't hate them because he would have done the same if he were in their shoes. However, Mephi is annoyed at Elric for licking Neresta's boots. Just 1,000 years ago, all of the Hexicol were busy following the Mervingers. And besides, they both are the masters of their houses, so they are the same rank. Elric tells Mephi that it wasn't Guy's fault, and it's been ages since the fall of House Mervinger. Elric came to the palace because it's his friend's family, but he has ulterior motives. Nerestas are his rivals, and he needs to know what their wizards are like and what kind of person Guy is. Guy announces his unconditional support for the Mervinger family, which comes as a shock to Elric. Guy tells him that it is a token of appreciation for the rites of excavation. Mephi is a bit skeptical. He wonders whether Guy wants to strengthen his ties with Elric or if he wishes to take him in while he's powerless. Either way, Elric doesn't have much to lose. And with the Neresta family support, he can rise to a higher status sooner. However, Guy supporting Elric will cause conflict with the other families, including the Hexical. Confusion clouds Elric's mind because why would the master of Neresta support the powerless house of Mervinger if he doesn't have anything to gain? Before Elric could accept Guy's support, an intruder breaks in through the window. The glass shards fly off everywhere. Elric wonders who would be foolish enough to attack the Neresta residence. His eyes widen in surprise when he sees the intruder, as if something impossible has happened. The intruder, covered in a hooded gown, points towards Elric and claims to take him as his apprentice. Sean once told young Mervinger that his father collects talent, and they always had more than 100 guests in their house. The Neresta's real power comes from their Senate house where the monsters stay. The Neresta family tells the senator that his intrusion into the master's chamber is unacceptable. The Senate's head was the teacher of all the wizards of House Neresta. He was known as the White Knight, Augustine Neresta. He was more powerful than Guy himself. The senator apologizes for the intrusion and tells Guy that he's here to take Elric as his apprentice. Guy tells the old man that Elric is one of the 4 dukes of the Empire and the master of the Mervinger family, so he will not be able to take him in. Before Guy could say anything further, our protagonist steps in through the crowd and introduces himself to Augustine Neresta. He tells him that he recognizes him from his father's tales and that if his family had had him, then they wouldn't have fallen so easily. Augustine compliments Mervinger's cleverness and asks him to be his apprentice. Though he declines the proposal, Augustine insists that he took some of his teachings from the Hall of Mist. So Elric tells him that that was unintentional, and he only did it to escape the Hall of Mist. Besides, it was Augustine himself who put him in that position. Augustine gets tired of his lack of seriousness. He stomps his feet down, and everything around turns into a glittering night sky. Everyone gets astounded by the bright glowing night sky. Augustine smacks Elric, moving him across the space. The physical movement that felt like teleportation surprised Elric. A wizard can't be moving that fast. Augustine grabs him and leaves. Tasha gets furious at Sean's inaction, but Sean tells her that this is how this stupid guy does things. Mephi is almost impressed by Elric's unpredictability and thinks Augustine is his next target after himself. Elric taking on Augustine wasn't something that even Mephi expected, and Augustine is now in for a lesson. Yummervinger wakes up, having no idea where he is. As he opens his eyes, he gets startled and slips off the cliff. Just as is about to fall off the cliff, Augustine grabs him. After all, he doesn't want to lose his first apprentice in 90 years. Elric only wanted to steal some knowledge from the teacher of the Nerestas. He didn't anticipate that he would be kidnapped like that when he only wanted to keep Augustine interested. As he stands at the edge of a cliff, he wonders if he just made a mistake. He tries to get a grip on things and activate his mana, but realizes that his mana isn't working, just like mana of vascularity. Elric asks Augustine what he did to him. Augustine tells him to see it himself and lets him go to fall down the cliff. Elric visits the Neresta family. Elric's powers have been taken away, so he cannot save himself. He continues to fall, but then out of nowhere, Mephi comes to his rescue. He asks Mephi to help him by teaching him how to use the seal of Peccadum Originale because he thinks he'll need that to escape. Mephi tells him that he doesn't need that much power. Despite his mana being restricted, Mephi tells Elric that he can use the mana all around him. Elric uses this knowledge to use the situation to help himself. Suddenly, his magic incantation glows and a gust of wind breaks his fall. Elric safely lands on the ground with a loud bang. Mana restriction made him feel like he's suffering from mana avascularity again, and he barely survived that fall. However, he wonders what place he's in. He has good geographical knowledge, but he doesn't recognize this place from anything he's heard about, and it feels similar to the Hall of Mist. The old man tells Elric that this place is the Maze of Mist, a much more complicated version of the Hall of Mist. He finds it impressive the way Elric used the mana in the atmosphere to compensate for his own mana restriction. He asks the old man why he put him in danger if he wants him as an apprentice. The old man tells him that he can't teach him what he taught the Neresta family, but he will still teach him something. The old man tells Elric everything. He might be known as the senator of House Neresta, but is also the leader of the Luya group. They only take one successor every generation, and the training is unrelated to the Nerestas. It is the first time ever that Elric has heard about a group called Lui. However, Mephi recognizes the name, but he didn't know the group was still active. He tells Elric that Lauat came from the east and was quite the hindrance when he was active. Their magic is more combat-oriented than ordinary magic. Similar to martial arts, their magic focuses on using the mana circulation to fortify the body and engage in hand-to-hand combat, and this is exactly what Elric needs to learn. Mephi tells Elric that Lui magic specializes in different branches of magic. Given Elric's different energies clashing, this is exactly what he needs right now. Elric struggled to use all the powers he had, and now he realizes he has won a lottery. He can acquire the ancient knowledge without getting in trouble with the Neresta family. He asks the old man if he'll teach him the martial arts magic, which surprises him because it wasn't recorded in history. The old man quits delaying and tells Elric that he's surrounded by dire wolves who are 3 times bigger and stronger than normal wolves. He must remember that Lui magic is focused on combat experience and try his best to survive. A group of giant dire wolves jumps at Elric. His eagerness to learn Lui martial arts without his mana turns into fear. Meanwhile, at the top of the mountain, another man shows his concern about Elric because he has only been practicing magic for half a year. The old man tells him that Elric's skills are more than an amateur's and he believes he'll win. Elric struggles to hold his ground against the dire wolves. He gets knocked down, which makes the other man think he's going to lose, but the old man tells him to keep watching. Elric refuses to stay down. He harnesses the mana and swings a punch at the dire wolf, breaking its jaw. Elric's display of power and persistence further enforces the old man's belief in him. He believes the Lui has found what it yearned for more than 1,000 years. However, Elric still has a long road ahead of him, which is why the old man asks Gialdi, the leader of the Resistance, to step up. The Oculus never managed to identify all of the Resistance's members, but it was known that their leaders were as strong as any lion or the Tower Masters of the Chirium. They were a fearsome terrorist organization that fought to free the continent from the Empire and the Emperor. Gialdi, the king of the beasts, is one of their former leaders. Gialdi agrees to help the old man, but the old man was excited to have an apprentice after so long. So Gialdi asks him if he's really sure. However, Miffy believes things will only get difficult from here on because the other one will be more cautious. Elric agrees that he cannot do this without mana and thinks the old man is insane for leaving him to fight the wolves with his hands. He's desperate to use the armor spell that he used at the Snowy Mountain, and if he knew any better, he would have done some physical training. An idea strikes Elric at that moment. He remembers the research he did on body fortification, which is no different from physical training. Body fortification was a hidden martial art that was handed down to the descendants of the Tiger Kings. The Tiger tribe, who ruled the realm of Therianthropes, believe the body is a smaller version of the universe that God created. They believe the breath flows from the body the same way mana flows through nature. This allows one's body to undergo changes depending on how they breathe and what they focus on. One has to use instinct to focus on a single point from the countless pictures presented before the subconscious. The trick is to abandon reason and use only instinct and intuition to move freely. That is exactly what Elric does. He uses his instinct, believes his intuition, and sees the wolf lurking around. He swings a punch and kills the wolf effortlessly. Miffy is shocked at how Elric learned to fight like a Therianthrope. After finally defeating the two wolves, Elric sits down to catch his breath. The old man is impressed with Elric's performance, but this only means raising the difficulty. Before that, the old man rewards Elric. He points to a cliff where the moss is growing and tells him to take it. Elric accepts his fate. He understands that he has to defeat all the wolves to get over this training. Gets up and faces the remaining dire wolves. After fighting for 10 days straight, Elric makes it to the cliff where the moss was growing. The Devours possess demonic energy, but Miffy doesn't understand why it's growing here. Elric worries if the demonic energy will replenish his mana if he eats the plants, but Miffy tells him that its effect is equivalent of herbal medicine on normal human beings. But since Elric carries demonic seals, the plants might work for him and might even enhance his mastery of the seals themselves. Miffy believes there's a reason the old man sent him here, but he still can't understand how a demonic plant is growing in this realm. Elric has a love-hate relationship with the old man. He put him in danger, but it is also because of the old man that Elric could enhance his seal mastery and increase his mana. Not to mention, it was because of the mana restriction that Elric could fortify his body as well. All the good things aside, he's glad that it's about to end now. As Elric walks past the dead dire wolves and heads inside the cave, he sees the last dire wolf, but then a human leg catches his attention. The man riding the dire wolf tells Elric that even though he knew about his academic achievements, he didn't expect him to be so skillful already. The man gets off the dire wolf and tells Elric that if he can defeat the last wolf, then he will take him as his disciple instead. Augustine Arresta rushes in the moment Gialdi tries to recruit Elric and gives him his final task. Augustine argues that he put in the effort to train him, and Gialdi argues that the dire wolves he killed were difficult to obtain. He is to go to the Dragon Zone in the south to get the pups and then feed them Devours for 5 years to raise them. Miffy points out how the two look desperate to train Elric. Gialdi asks Elric if he wants to be an apprentice of the King of the Beasts, but Elric refuses, which leaves Master Arresta in awe. Elric tells Gialdi that he already accepted Master Arresta as his teacher, and now changing sides would not be loyal. Gialdi offers to teach him how to use the Phantom Eye to control beasts. Elric finds this deal convincing and agrees to be Gialdi's apprentice. He asks him to teach him the Phantom Eye, but Gialdi tells him to defeat the dire wolf first. The Phantom Eye requires great control of mana, and the Louis combat style boosts one's mana circulation, which enhances the Phantom Eye. Elric has recovered his mana by eating the Devours. So once he defeats the final dire wolf without using magic, Gialdi agrees to teach him the Phantom Eye skill. He wastes no time and throws the dire wolf flying. With the last challenge completed, he now wishes to learn the Phantom Eye skill. The old man, Augustine, approaches Elric. He stands before him and places his hand on Elric's shoulder to show him the truth. They teleport outside the Louis Hall, a sacred place for Louis. Elric senses the thick and gloomy demonic energy. It looks like a demonic zone that could only be built by higher demons. Nefer felt something different about the place when he first saw the Devours, and the place looks like it was built by Augustine. The old man tells Elric that his family hunted demons for generations, but he raises the question about how a demon zone is a sacred place for Luya. As they head inside the hall, Elric recognizes the Eastern architecture and the Eastern languages. The old man tells him that the founder of Luya was an alchemist who was researching medical botany in the East. Until one day, he lost his wife and daughter to a higher demon. He chased the demon all the way to the west to get revenge. However, the demon was strong and the Grandmaster had to change his plans. So he decided to strengthen himself by combining the knowledge of the East with the wizardry of the West and went so far as to take some elements of the demon power. The founder's grudge has been going on for 1,000 years. Elric thinks the reason the old man took him as his disciple is because no one has been able to exact revenge yet, but the old man tells him that the revenge was carried out a long time ago. The revelation that it was the old man himself who took the revenge surprises Elric. Mephi too acknowledges that the old man must be really powerful to have defeated that demon. He cannot begin to comprehend his master's strength to have defeated such a powerful demon. The old man tells him that the fight was affected by other things too, which is why he set a new goal for himself. He shows Elric the demon and tells him that he wanted to prove that it was his skills that defeated the demon by raising a disciple and having him fight the demon again. Elric is that disciple. The old man wants him to use his teachings and fight the demon, all to prove that he and his teachings are more powerful than the demon. Elric's job isn't just to defeat the demon and prove the old man's skills. His job is to take its seal. It startles him when he finds out the old man knows he can take demon seals despite being human. However, Master Naresta assures him that he will not reveal his secret. Not trusting the old man's promise, Elric gets defensive. The old man decides to reveal a secret of his own to win his trust. Yahello tries to stop the old man, but he remains persistent. The old man takes the bandages off his hand and reveals his biggest secret, the arm of a dark elf. Where the regular elves live in the forest of light, the dark elves live in the dark underground and worship evil. The Empire, after wiping them out, classified them as demons. Elric points out that transplanting body parts across species is illegal, especially with demons. The old man tells him that no one, besides Yahello, knows about his secret, not even his nephew Guy. He tells him that he found out about his secret when he was unconscious. The old man's intention was only to teach Elric more efficiently, so he apologizes for making him uncomfortable. It was because of that revelation that the old man decided to make Elric stay and achieve his lifelong goal. He understands that it might come off as greedy to him, so he gives him the choice to walk out if he likes. Yahello, his tiger, and Mephi, they all stand waiting for Elric's choice. He understands that it is greedy of the old man to expect him to fulfill his goal. However, he also sees things from the old man's perspective. He understands that just like the old man, he too is working towards a goal, so he cannot refuse him. Elric bows before Master Naresta in respect and accepts him as his master. Then he asks the master about his next steps and the name of the demon. The old man tells him that the beast is known by many names from east to west, but the Lui call it the vicious beast, Shu. Without hesitating, Elric steps forward with confidence to complete his task. Even Mephisto recognized Shu's power, so absorbing its seal could greatly strengthen him. However, he still doesn't know how to absorb seals. Mephi gets annoyed that he didn't even know how to absorb the seals while acting so confident all that time. He tells him that for demons, absorbing seals is the same as eating. No one tells someone how to eat, so he can't teach him how to absorb the seals. The gravity of the situation settles in for Elric. The Grand Collar shows no reaction, and when he first absorbed the Mountain King seal, it happened on its own. Finally, a realization makes everything clear. All he has to do is absorb. Elric moves forward, and the beast starts to scream and move around while he absorbs its seal. It wasn't just magic, martial arts, and body fortification that he learned in the past week. He also learned to harmonize the different magical energies within him. Elric used his new knowledge to combine the mechanism of seals and incantation, and it worked. He learned to absorb the seal. Suddenly, Elric finds himself surrounded by woods. He wonders if he is teleported to some alternate reality as a test, just like the Mountain King. However, the surroundings give a sense of the opposite. He doesn't see any insects or birds in the huge forest. The place feels silent, like everything has been devoured. He doesn't feel that just because he's in an alternate reality, the sound of the wind, the sound of the swamp bubbles, and the gloomy noise that feels out of place. They all indicate that there must be a powerful predator lurking in the dark. As Elric moves through the woods, something catches his attention as if he saw something lurking. He wonders if it's in the bushes or the sky, but he cannot sense it. Suddenly, a huge beast opens its jaws behind Elric to get a taste of a special human. He observes his enemy. The light that shines through the leaves turns shadows into its teeth. He wonders if he has to fight it like he did with the Mountain King. He doesn't know how to devour the seal yet, so Elric decides it's best to observe because he doesn't wish to die. The beast calls him out for taking his time, unlike his ancestors who dived into the battle first. Young Movinger wonders how the beast knows about his lineage. The beast realizes there's more when he notices Mephistopheles' seal. It sees the dragon heart and realizes that Elric knows how to use the incantations too. He can sense the hunger in the beast as if it's desperate to devour him, but he doesn't plan to give up easily. He intends to fight. The beast didn't plan to make a move. Now he feels that things just got intriguing. The beast rises to the air, covering everything underneath its shadow. It tells him to get hungry and feed his desire and greed because that's how he can meet it again. Elric finds himself struggling to move, and then in a moment, he finds himself back in reality. They are all surprised that it was so easy. However, Mephi points out that the demon is playing tricks. It had no physical edges, so it was difficult to maintain its existence. So the demon is trying to cling to Elric to grow strong with his life energy. He wonders if the demon wants him to use the seal to make himself stronger so it can gain back its original powers. He asks Mephi for the demon's name, but Mephi refuses to help. Master Naresta tells him that Shu's proper name is Shanshan, the disaster god. After the demon was defeated by the old man, it would have degraded, so it should have changed from Shanshan to Shanga, Shansha, and Shanxing meaning disaster devil, disaster killer, and disaster star. Mephi is annoyed with the old man that a human knows the hierarchy of demon names. Mephi finds it a bit odd the way the old man talks about it. The old man celebrates Shanbao, the disaster violence, and presents the seal of Violentus. He tells Elric that Shu used to be a demon called Egui or a wraith of starvation. Because of their hungry nature and the craving for power, they climbed up from the bottom of the demon hierarchy. Because of this, the seal will allow Elric to detect danger more efficiently and find out his opponent's weaknesses in a second. This ability is exactly what Louis was trying to recreate. It aimed to transcend the 5 human senses through mana circulation to awaken the intuition, the feeling of heightened senses. The old man calls it the way of the. The old man bursts into tears, successfully acquiring the seal of Shu. He tells Elric that he now needs to enhance the seal so he can compete with Zu's real form. Elric sees the detailed knowledge that the Louis and Master Augustine have acquired. He understands how difficult it must have been for them to gain such information, and they gathered all this knowledge for only one goal. The goal was to acquire the seal of Violentus, and Elric decides to serve the Louis' purpose. Suddenly, Elric feels his heart itch, and his senses heighten the way the master told him. He talks to the old man about it, but then Sean rushes in, tired and gasping for breath as if he ran a marathon. Without explaining much, he tells Elric to get out because he is in danger. Meanwhile, back at the Naresta Palace, Hanabi calls Tasha to show her something. She asks if the Duke of the Shining Star has finished his training, but then sees a girl approach. She tells Hanabi to keep the girl waiting for a little longer and then she will greet her herself. The girl is Elric's sister who is there to see her brother. As Elric learns about his sister's arrival and her face-off against Tasha, he rushes to the Naresta Palace in a hurry as if the worst is about to happen. He tells Sean that he should have stopped her. However, Sean points out that Elric is the one to blame. He is the reason Tasha has gotten so competitive. Meanwhile, Tasha goes off to face Elric's sister. She has nothing to worry about because she remembers Sean mentioning that she probably has no magic talent. However, Elric is scared of his sister, and it can't be just because of her age, which makes Tasha wonder what's so special about her. Elric's sister keeps waiting at the door. The guards refuse to let her in. She insists on meeting Sean, but the guards tell her that they can't go against Tasha's orders. While she asks the guards why Tasha won't let her in, she hears her from behind. Elric's sister, Heise Mervinger, bows in respect before Tasha. Her politeness despite the harsh treatment comes off as a surprise to Tasha. Heise asks her the reason why she's not allowed inside. Tasha tells her that they can't allow someone to randomly walk in and out of the Naresta Palace. Despite the visible traits of the Mervinger family, Tasha argues that she can't just trust anyone because it could be a disguise. Besides, it is protocol. To make Heise prove herself, Tasha challenges her to a duel. However, Heise can't use magic, so Tasha proposes using aura as an alternative. In a dramatic way, Heise tells Tasha she doesn't want to hurt her. Tasha flicks her fingers and a blast goes off, transforming the surroundings into a battleground. The huge boulders float around and Heise's suitcase transforms into a heavy hammer. Lady Tasha uses her fire magic and elevates into the air to attack Heise with fire. They both talk about their competitive nature. Heise tells Tasha that sometimes she split Elric's head open in competition. Heise's strength becomes undeniably visible as she throws her gigantic hammer with little effort. Tasha's eyes remain wide open in shock when she sees Heise's 100-kilo heavy hammer fly off at her face. Heise being a martial artist was already a surprise for her, but her throw of that heavy hammer without using aura proves her elite genetics. As the hammer slams to the ground, the Black Skull logo reveals shocking new information. Heise is a member of the most powerful mercenary guild of the Empire. It becomes clear why Elric was scared of her in the first place, but Tasha doesn't plan to go easy yet. As they continue to take swings at each other, someone interrupts the fight. Annoyed by the unwanted interruption that ruined their fun, Heise grabs her brother by the throat. Elric tells his sister that although she's enjoying sparring with Tasha, she cannot destroy their home. Heise, no longer in the mood for charms, tells Elric that she needs to talk to him. Meanwhile, Tasha decides to gather some intel on Heise. To her disappointment, there exists no record of her information. However, it doesn't surprise her since the Black Skull is the Empire's most powerful mercenary guild. She understands that they must keep secrets as a measure to stay safe from the enemies they must have made with that power. The only high society ties the leader of Black Skull had were with the Grey Lion of Domus Leonese. No one thought that the elder daughter of the Mervinger family would be a member of this guild. At first, Tasha thought Elric's power was reason enough to make an alliance with the Mervingers. But now Hai's connection to the Black Skull and her power is all the more reason to stay friendly with the Mervingers. Meanwhile, Elric and Hai's quarrel continues. She chases him with her hammer while Elric fights for his life. She points out how Elric has learned magic and talks back to his sister, but then swings her hammer at him. Elric manages to dodge the death blow thanks to the way of Eggy. Hais has always threatened to break off Elric's legs every time he caused trouble. Meanwhile, Mephi enjoys the fight from a distance. He has never seen Elric so scared before, and watching someone use aura instead of mana for the first time really intrigues Mephi. Hais swings a blow that Elric can't dodge. He casts a shield to block the attack. Even with his abilities, Elric struggles to hold his ground against his sister's powerful attack. But as he looks up, he finds Haisa holding down her hammer. She was relieved that Elric was trying his best when she found out that he's going to the dragon's den, but then he fell unconscious. After waking up, he disappeared and never contacted her. She was upset that Elric never contacted her and she had to go half a year without him. Hais was always protective of Elric, always stopping him from doing things, and he hated her for it. But he also understands that she wasn't trying to control him. After their parents' death, it was she who took on the role of an adult. She had no family except him. So, of course, she was protective and wanted to take care of her brother. Elric tells her everything, that his being unconscious and disappearing, all of it, was to their family's mission. Even though he felt like giving up on the mission, he felt that there's no point in restoring the family's honor. But then after some experiences, he realized that demons and evil could take over the world anytime. He thought it would be a disgrace to the family if he chose to hide instead of fighting evil like ancestors did. Elric tells Hais that he is going north to find the mission of their ancestors. And no matter how dangerous it gets, he wishes to fulfill the mission just like their grandfather. He will keep going until the whole world shines like stars. Tears run down Hais's cheeks as she gets emotional with her brother's speech, but she still threatens to bash his head if he disappears again. Elric points out that she was supposed to show some appreciation for his goals, but Haisa tells him she won't believe him so soon after what he did. Meanwhile, Mephi, who was observing the heart-to-heart conversation of the two siblings, is disappointed that Elric didn't get more pain. He fails to understand the complexity of human emotions. Meanwhile, somewhere in the far distant lands, a man covered in robes, his face hidden behind a mask, holds a relic to revive Azazel. 3 months later, Eric continues to train day and night. He sheds his blood and sweat. At the top of the mountain, he sits idle, covering his eyes to train for the Phantom Eye. A falcon flies around him that he manages to catch. Only with the help of his Phantom Eye. Master Gialade praises Elric's quick adoption of the Phantom Eye, but then Master Augustine attacks him out of nowhere. Still with his eyes closed, Elric manages to block the swing, proving to his master that he has mastered the way of the Eggy too. Master Augustine tells him that he has learned everything they could teach him. From here on, he has to learn on his own by engaging in real combat. Elric sighs in relief that he never has to see both of his masters after everything they put him through. The masters think it's very mannerless of him to respond that way. Elric thanks his masters for all that he learned from them and flies away, hoping to never see them again. After Elric flies away, leaving the two, they feel nostalgic for the old days when they roamed the Empire with Seth. Augustine and Gialade cherish the old days, how Seth would have thought they were grumpy old farts, and how nice they are in comparison to him. Elric fleeing to the north, leaving his masters, makes them think that he needs to learn some manners. Back at the Naresta Palace, Elric hands over the excavation rights to Tasha. She thanks Elric and tells him that a carriage is waiting outside to take him to the north. Getting the rights to the dragon's den excites Tasha because of her love for dragons, but Elric didn't expect her to be this happy. Either way, Elric is glad to have secured a friendly relation with the Narestas. However, he wonders if Isabel has forgotten about the favor she owes him, but for now, he decides to take that carriage. Meanwhile, the Blue Lion stands over the slain bodies of his enemies, the Blue Wolves sent by Paul Whale. He feels disappointed in Paul Whale for thinking the Blue Lion was so weak that he'd send a few men to kill him. However, Isabel suggests that he must be getting eager now because he's running out of men and power, and he knows that if the Blue Lion allied with the Mervinger family, his position would be threatened. Isabel's uncles agree with her theory and suggest killing Paul once and for all. The Blue Lion tells them that he will deal with the family matter himself, but first he needs to meet the Duke of the Shining Star and then think about what to do with Paul. Somewhere out there, the masked man inquires about the failure to make Paul the next Blue Lion. Hilton tells him someone interrupted but assures him that their bigger plan won't be affected. The masked man feels that killing the Blue Lion while he was suffering from aura blockage should have been easy if Elric hadn't interfered. However, he believes going against Elric is useless right now and tells Hilton to focus on making Paul the next Blue Lion and use his body and army to serve Azazel, his true master. Meanwhile, outside the Naresta Palace, Elric is annoyed that the carriage that Tasha arranged for him came with a horseman. Not only that, Sean, Heiss, and both of his masters are there too. He finds the trip with all those people annoying and embarrassing, and it feels like a family trip to him. Mephi too shows his disdain for the crowded trip. Augustine and Heiss introduce each other. Heiss thanks Augustine for helping her brother and calls Gialdi's animals cute, but Augustine tells her the cute animals are the assistants of the King of Beasts. Sean too sits with a frown as if he's forced to go with Elric. Heiss plays with the beasts while Augustine and Gialdi sit in silence. As they head home, Elric feels slightly comfortable and homey. After Elric and the others leave for the north, Guy Nyster thinks it's amusing that a group of different people is traveling together. Meanwhile, Heiss tells Elric to have some manners and uses Sean as an example, which Elric finds ridiculous. With the permission of the two masters, Hauazi decides to teach him some manners. She grabs Elric by the shoulders and takes her hammer out to go for a walk. Elric gets frightened of the hammer, but Hauazi drags him by his ear. Mephi of all enjoys seeing Elric get dragged out. As they travel through the village, they face a hindrance. A group of 3 bandits threatens them with their knives and tells them to give all their stuff. The bandits and Elric stare at each other for a moment, which agitates them even more. Elric gets out of the carriage to deal with the bandits, but Gialdi stops him. He wants to display his power to his students and calls his tiger. The bandits get scared for their lives when they see the tiger. As Gialdi is about to show his power, Elric drops a giant ice block in the middle to stop him. He tells Gialdi that a bloodbath isn't the way because these mountain folks are robbing out of necessity. The bandits kneel before Elric and beg for his forgiveness, saying that their families are starving. Elric asks them if they would have been begging them if they were weak, which leaves the bandit speechless. The chief of the bandits agrees with Elric and begs him to spare his accomplices and punish him instead. The accomplices beg for their punishment instead. However, Elric decides to check whether the bandits are telling the truth about starvation. As they head inside the village, the chief tells them that their village had a drought for several years, which led to a shortage of food. Due to a lack of resources, it was either starving to death or robbery. On top of that, they can't relocate somewhere else because the nearest village is 5 days away on a horse ride. The loss of livestock due to famine made it even worse. The chief breaks down in despair and blames himself for the condition of his village. Master Augustine acknowledges that the villagers have done wrong by robbing, but suggests showing mercy because it is the Empire's failure to not send welfare. He believes that looking after the needy is a duty of nobility. The chief thanks Enjoy and promises to never rob anyone again. However, Mephi continues to look around. He scans his surroundings and senses a faint demonic energy coming from the fields. They head to the vast barren lands. Master Augustine asks Elric if he's sure about the demonic energy because he can't sense anything. Mephi tells Elric that the demonic energy is buried somewhere underneath this vast land and he should keep his promise of giving him the demonic energy. Elric agrees with Mephi and tells everyone to step aside so he can pierce through the ground. He summons a giant ice block and in an instant creates a giant hollow pit in the ground, surprising the bystanders. Elric jumps into the pit and finds a chest hidden underneath. He opens the chest and tremendous amounts of demonic energy come out. To everyone's surprise, a relic remains hidden in the chest. There exist 4 demon lords serving the Dark Lord and ruling over the demons. Mephistopheles, the prince of original sin, Chaitan, the prince of demise, Lilith, the princess of fornication, and Azazel, the prince of insanity, the demon lord and tyrant who controlled the biggest army of higher demons. Azazel was obsessed with the human world and destroyed countless kingdoms under his invasion. The totem is made by Azazel's followers to use it for human sacrifice. Elric suspects that the totem made for human sacrifice could mean that the villagers were to be sacrificed for Azazel's revival. Mephi agrees that the suspicion is most likely true. He tells Elric to absorb the demonic energy of the totem and give it to him, but then Master Augustine interrupts. He suggests handing over the information to the Bureau because the totem is a discovery of the traces of demons exterminated 30 years ago. To Mephi's disappointment, Elric agrees with Master Augustine, and he can't leave the totem empty if it's going to be handed over to the Administration Bureau. He asks Mephi to teach him how to use his seal and then he can do something, but Mephi refuses. As Master Augustine hands over the chest to Sean to have it sent to the Administration Bureau, Mephi gets desperate and offers to give Elric anything but telling him how to use his seal. Between Sean, Mephi, and Master Augustine's wish to send it to the Bureau, Shu takes one over. He senses the demonic energy in the totem and absorbs it in an instant. Mephi gets angry that Shu took over his target. Elric suggests that a totem can't bring drought to an entire village, and there must be more. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, Azazel's followers worship him while the high priest feels something is wrong. He senses Elric's interference with the relic. The high priest with his worshippers stands before the gigantic statue of Azazel. He asks him for his wrath to punish the disturbers. The high priest tells his followers to tell Judah to go to Kaya and perform the revival ritual before heading north. Meanwhile, back at the village, Elric stands by the lake. He wonders why no one noticed the demons. However, the villagers are happy that they got back the water again to regrow crops. Too many people were sacrificed, but not anymore. Master Augustine tells Elric that the evidence has been sent to the Administrative Bureau and now it is up to them to start the investigation. He assures Elric that the officials around the village will be held responsible too. However, punishing them is no longer in their control. Elric agrees with Master Augustine. With the Bureau's involvement, the demons won't move freely. And right now, he is to focus on finding the Flower Temple to Master Winter and then he can wipe out the demons. The village chief thanks Elric with gratitude. Elric tells him to take care of the villagers and says goodbye to them. The villagers are surprised to know that the wizard who just helped him is none other than the Lacant hero, the Duke of the Shining Star, Elric Mervinger. They cherish in happiness that the Star of the Empire proved himself once again. As Elric and the others continue their travel, Carl calls him outside. This time, it's the Oculus standing in their way. The Oculus is an intelligence agency serving mainly the imperial family. They show no remorse to kidnap, coerce, or murder someone if that achieves their mission. Their power is equal to that of the Tyrium and the Domus Leonis. It doesn't surprise Elric that they are here since they failed to detect the demon activity until he had resolved everything and sent them the report with the totem. No matter their power or that they are backed by the Emperor, he is offended by the disrespect towards the Duke of the Shining Star. Elric's scoff offends them. The Oculus begins to boast about the Oculus power, but he interrupts him, showing no care. He uses Shu's power and tells them that the fact that they are doing fieldwork probably means they are a Viscount at best. So with or without the imperial family's backing, they cannot talk to the Duke of the Shining Star like that. Elric's demonic power forces the Oculus to give in. They didn't know he was at the level of a high wizard. Having no choice but to give in, the Oculus agents look at each other, agreeing to a common understanding. The Oculus takes his mask off, bows before Elric in respect, and apologizes for the disrespect. He went too hard with his display of power, but rightfully so. Because he believes if he hadn't done that, they would have seen him as weak and bothered him at every chance they got. He tells them that if they do something like that again, he will inform the council. The Oculus walk away, grinding their teeth at Elric in anger, but there's one more person who isn't done with them yet. Master Augustine approaches him and tells him that they dared to disrespect his student, but if it were him, he would have taken their head for it. All sorts of emotions take over the Oculus agent. He never thought Elric would be a student of the strongest wizard of the Tyrium. So much lack of information makes it clear to him that he needs to change his informants to someone who can actually do their job. Having failed the intimidation tactics, the Oculus agent formally introduces himself as patron from the 4th Bureau of Oculus. Elric realizes that he's from the Crown Prince's side and wonders if the news has already reached him. Elric's arrogant lack of seriousness annoys Patron, but is forced to smile and be polite. He tells Elric that they have been secretly pursuing the remnant demons for some time and discovered an unidentified group recently. Elric tells him about Grigory, showing that he already knows, which makes Patron wonder how. He forgets that Elric is a Mervinger, a natural enemy to the demons. Elric only sent the Bureau one totem, so Patron inquired about the remaining 8 pieces. He tells Elric it is illegal and recites Article 2 Section 2. According to the article, the items relating to demons must be stored by the Imperial Court as evidence. Elric counters with Article 8 Section 1. The article states that with private ownership, the demon items can be owned by private individuals for research purposes with permission from the relevant authority. Elric already has the permission. He calls the Oculus slow to catch up. Patron shakes and trembles in frustration. He asks Elric one final question. He asks how Elric knew the exact location of the totems. Once again, Elric uses his family name to avoid answering the question, which frustrates Patron even more. Having been done with the Oculus, Elric tells them to end it here. Patron hates Elric's arrogant attitude, but he can't say anything. He politely thanks Elric for his cooperation and leaves in his carriage. After the Oculus leaves, Sean calls Elric out for being so daring against the Oculus. However, Hayes thinks he did great. Dualidit tells Elric that the Oculus isn't the kind to let go, but Elric tells him that he doesn't plan to let them go like that, not after they bothered him for no reason. Meanwhile, Petron kneels before the Oculus agent and apologizes for having failed. The Oculus agent changes back his disguise, revealing that it was the Crown Prince Garrett's all along. He tells Petron that it was him, the Crown Prince, who has failed them. The Crown Prince might have thought that his disguise was convincing, and it might have been if not for Elric's phantom eye skill and his control over animals. A bat sat observing everything, and Elric got wind of the Crown Prince's plans. The Crown Prince tells Petron that it's him who failed them because it was his decision to meet Elric out of jealousy to hold him in contempt unfairly. However, clearing the remnant demons in hiding is more important right now. Petron tells him that House Garrett is working for Grigory. Their entire household is made of demons, and every bit of circumstantial evidence from the totems points to their estate. The Crown Prince tells Petron that in order to gain an advantage in the battle for the throne, he needs to succeed at this mission without any failure. The Crown Prince still has feelings for his former betrothed Isabel. He had to break off the wedding for political reasons, and Patron thinks that the reason the Crown Prince joined him in disguise was to find out information about the man who saved Isabel. Patron only wanted to make the Crown Prince more comfortable. However, his attempt to put down Elric gave him a reason to humiliate them. The Crown Prince will soon be the son leading the Empire, and therefore, he cannot get involved with Elric anymore. Patron decides that it's time that Elric dies. However, Elric still observes all the plotting with his bat. Meanwhile, the Oculus gather outside the demon zone with the order to wipe out everything. Among the Oculus, Sean, Elric, and Heiser fight the demons too. Because of this clever involvement, Elric was able to obtain some information. Seeing the Crown Prince in disguise among the Oculus was just a bonus. What really mattered to Elric was the information on the demon's hideout. While the Oculus and Garrett fight each other, Elric plans to rob the house and take away all the totems and run. The Masters will keep the route open for them. Elric frees Mephi to feed on demonic energy while he runs through the burning city to infiltrate the mansion. They face the wall made to hold back the infiltrators. However, it is not strong enough to hold back Elric. He uses his blizzard spell and conjures ice spears and arrows, tearing down the wall. He then attacks the people standing on the other side of the wall. The people suddenly change their form, revealing their true appearance. They change into huge demons with wings and glowing eyes. The Masters will save the innocent people in town so Elric and Sean can freely fight against the demon army. Sean uses cutting wind to slash the demons in half, while Heiser smashes through the heads of every demon she comes across. She tells Elric to go for the demon hideout while they fight the demons. Meanwhile, the demons keep busy trying to move the relics through the hidden passage. They think it will be a while before Oculus finds them, and until then, they'll be gone. However, Elric is not the Oculus. The roof above the demon's head starts to crack, and he barges into the secret hideout. The huge totems will be a feast for his demonic seals. As the city gets rampaged, Viscount Garrett gets angry that the Oculus found the vault. He wonders how they found out about it since only the closest knew about it. He questions if a mole infiltrates his estate, but then his mansion's wall gets blown off. Patron, along with the Oculus, makes a heroic entry inside Garrett's mansion. He calls Kaya, who takes Garrett's body, a rat. Garrett tells him he's the rat for planting a mole in his house and taking over his vault. However, this is the first time he is hearing about the vault. Kaya thinks that he's playing dumb and threatens to torture him. He bravely draws out his sword to execute the demon officially under the Imperial Court's name. They both charge at each other, causing a huge blast in the mansion that can be seen from a distance. Meanwhile, Heiser and Sean see the blast and wonder if Elric has done something stupid again. Right at that moment, he comes running out laughing. He gives Heiser the signal. She swings her hammer and sends it flying, destroying the mansion's pillars. The demons run for their lives while the mansion falls. Sean, Elric, and Heisey run to join the Masters. Master Augustine can't believe he agreed to do something like this, but Gialdi reminds him that it was his idea to play hero and one-up the Oculus. After evacuating the residence, Elric and his friends decide to run while the Viscounty gets blown to bits. The next morning, the Oculus stands above the ruins of the Viscounty. Patron gets angry that things didn't go as planned and that Kaya had managed to get outside help. All was buried underneath the rubble, but then one of the men tells Patron that the vault has been found. Although it was a minor setback, Patron's mission is to gather evidence of the demons and present them to the Crown Prince. The achievement can win him the throne and also make Patron the next director of Oculus. By planting false evidence of Elric's involvement, Patron can even finish his family as an added bonus. While Patron plots for his agenda, his men call him to show him the vault. To their surprise, the vault was already empty. At first, Patron thinks they had moved the totems already, but then he realizes that Kaya didn't know about the attack beforehand and he thought the Oculus had planted a mole. Suddenly, he realizes that a mole exists, not within Garrett's county, but within the Oculus. Meanwhile, Elric laughs over the thought of the Oculus' disappointment when they find the empty vault. Master Augustine finds his mischievous plays amusing while Mephi still sits upset. Elric calls him a petty demon lord and says he should have taught him how to use the magic seals. When they found the vault filled with demon energy totems, Mephi told Elric to fulfill his promise if he wants to make any future deals. So he agrees and lets Mephi absorb the demon energy. Mephi enjoys and savors every bit of demon energy. He finds it more delicious, especially since it belongs to Azazel. But then Elric stops feeding him and uses Mephi's desperation to get what he wants, the trigger to the seal of original sin. He threatens to feed the rest of the demonic energy to Shu if Mephi doesn't give him what he wants. Mephi grinds his teeth and burns in anger but gives in at the end. He told him that in order to use the seal, he must be worthy. And to be worthy, he must understand the seal. To understand the original sin, has to first acquire the seal in its hierarchy. However, the problem is that Mephisto was too full of himself to remember the underlings, but the imprinted pattern is a wolf, so Elric decides to use that as a start. While he thinks about understanding the original sin, Elric senses a demonic energy lurking around. The demon Kaya lurks around their carriage, eyeing the thieves who stole his totems.